The world has changed, and not because of the movement of lithospheric plates or a volcanic eruption. It's about monsters. They've suddenly started appearing all over the world, leaving the planet on the brink of extinction. The hero sighs at how many of them there are. And they appeared thanks to the Tower, a mystical place that gave monsters strength and power. People call this place the Devil's Tower, and they named her that because everyone dreamed of conquering her. Inside is everything you could wish for: strength, day, honor. Conquer the tower and get everything you want. Pass all the tests prepared especially for you. A huge tower with 999 floors, and it is ruled by gods and demons. Rulers of all countries tried to protect people from the tower, but no one managed to stop the attempts to conquer her. As the gods and demons warned, all those who prevented others from approaching the tower were punished. It has been 5 years since people began trying to conquer the tower, and now is humanity's first attempt to conquer the 600th floor. Our hero was already about to attack, but there were a lot of explosions. He screams that the Star 9 is trying to stop him again. They say the hero doesn't even understand what he's doing. Among the millions who took part in conquering the tower, 9 people stood out. With the help of magic and divine energy, they gained immeasurable power. The star nicknamed the Death Star. He is not a master of weapons and does not have superpowers, but he is the one who betrayed the 9 stars and got the title of the strongest. And his name is Chris Morris. Do the 9 stars really think they can resist his will? This won't end with one death. Chris is the one who brings destruction, the embodiment of death, the greatest necromancer. He summoned his army of skeletons. Perfect. The hero was tired of people anyway. All Chris needs is power. He uses the Star 9 to become the greatest. And they knew that he had betrayed humanity and had gotten involved with a demon. They have no choice. The leader has declared death to the traitor. Even though Chris betrayed the Star 9 by striking after receiving the power, he couldn't defeat them all on his own. The Star 9 pounced on him in full force, killing all the summoned skeletons. Chris betrayed humanity for the sake of power. However, this was just a common legend. He didn't betray humanity. In fact, it was Chris who was betrayed by 9 stars, 8 to be exact. But people were not told about this. 9 years have passed since then. The hero tossed and turned in bed, saying he would come back and deal with the fucking 9. He stood up abruptly and realized it had worked. It really worked. His secret skill is soul transfer. Just before death, this skill allows Chris to transfer his soul to a suitable body. It seems he chose a body with similar physical characteristics for the hero. And he's still in South Korea. The anger at the 9 stars hasn't died down. Chris would have been fine if he had gone to the 600th floor alone. They offered to help, and then betrayed him. When the hero was defeated, they decided to tell him the reason for the betrayal. Paladin Cain Pelin and St. Carmen Pelin say he will not be able to summon his evil spirits on this sacred ground. Although the Death Star was considered an entire army in the person of one person, it cannot compare with the rest. Chris was just trying to help. Cain said it was nothing personal. It didn't mean they were mean to the hero. They just decided to cut it off at the root. Chris yells, asking if that bastard Wade Lee is with them. The hero's friend, the battle star of the 9, Wade Lee, he decided not to participate in the cleansing of the 600th floor. The 9 simply didn't tell because they were afraid he would help Chris. The pathetic bastards caught him. His vision is blurry. The hero has lost too much blood. Okay, that's his miscalculation. For them, he will die once. But don't let the 9 think that this is the end. Chris will become even stronger, and he will take revenge on the traitors. So he sank into darkness for them. Let the 9 hold on. Chris hasn't even made them into his monsters yet. Now he will definitely make sure to destroy their souls and prevent them from being reborn. Suddenly, notifications started coming to his phone in bed. Chris was surprised. Maybe it's because he hasn't held anything like this in his hands for a long time, but it's cool. But he was even more shocked to see that it was now 2023. 10 years had passed. In just a moment, 10 whole years. What kind of ability is this? And then Chris wondered if he could even use magic in this body. He swatted the annoying fly and stood up abruptly. And then he told her to rise up, but nothing happened. Chris nervously shouted for her to get up right now. Damn, there's not a drop of mana in this body. Does this mean that the hero must conquer the tower with no abilities at all? Wait, if 10 years have passed, then the Star 9 have already managed to reach the top. Chris read on the internet that Wade Lee had reached the 800th floor. Come on, those bastards only managed to advance 200 floors in 10 years. This is Chris's chance. While they're wasting their time, he can rise up and get his revenge. The hero grabbed his sweater and ran. It was useless to train outside the tower. We need to go now. Chris may have a newbie body, but his Death Star knowledge is still there. He uses all his knowledge and techniques to become stronger as quickly as possible. Just wait, Star 9. Chris will definitely take revenge. The hero reached the entrance to the tower in Seoul, where a crowd was already standing. People are excited about the idea of cleaning it up and becoming rich. A place that holds many stories. A tower. At last, the hero has returned. He, Chris Morris, will make sure that everyone knows about him. At 13 o'clock, the entrance to the tower opened. People rushed like madmen. The time for revenge has finally come. The system welcomed the conqueror. This lasted for 15 years. Chris starts on the training floor. Damn, training. It's the only floor with such a stupid difficulty level. It will take several days to reach the end of the path, which is full of traps. Everyone says that out of the 10 floors, this one is the stupidest. The goal is to reach the destination. The wounds will heal upon reaching it or returning to the starting point. Chris opened the stats window and sighed in horror. Among them, he saw gluttony and manu. These were not the characteristics he had before. I don't want to believe that the features and talent are different only because Chris changed his body. So he's going to make the most of this training. The hero rushed and the magic arrow trap was activated. Chris sees the arrows flying out. His secret skill hasn't gone anywhere. However, there were too many of them for training. Chris tried to dodge and run further, but the arrows still hit him. He decided to ignore it, but the arrows only increased in number. Many arrows pierced his body, but Chris had to run, ignoring the pain. However, due to the number of arrows and damage he received, he returned to the start of the training area. The entire road was covered in blood. All wounds were healed. Let's see how long the hero can hold out. You can't just run forward mindlessly. 2 features make Chris the strongest conqueror on Earth. However, one of them is gluttony. Thanks to this feature, you can absorb everything dead and appropriate it. The blood Chris spills has no life-giving power, and the experience gained from spilling will all go to him. Stats increased by 1. To get rid of side effects, you don't have to dig into the settings. The hero will need a week to complete his training and become a great conqueror. But Chris will take all the arrows and continue. This way, he will increase his stats with gluttony, and so on until all the points are used up. A month later, Chris finally made it to the finish line and completed the training. I had to wander back and forth all this time. The system wrote that several gods and demons were interested in him. Those sick bastards again, gods and demons. They were looking for someone like themselves. God is angry at Chris's arrogance. Pathetic sadists. None of them have revealed their god's name or their real name. They're probably using some tricks to make the hero his student. Chris did a good job of training and does not need to be ordered around. The demon seemed to be smiling. The ruler of evil asked the hero how he was doing. Baal again, that fucking stalker. The ruler of evil Baal. In a past life, he hunted Chris to make him his servant. Did he recognize him? It was Baal who gave the hero the ability to move his soul. Chris said that he used it. God and demon became interested. The hero says that they are attracted because of Baal. The ruler of evil asks for forgiveness, and the gods want to talk in private. Chris asks them all to shut up. They are so annoying. They are wondering which one of them he will choose. If they want to continue watching, let them shut their mouths and just watch. The Lord of Evil is offended. If Chris chooses someone, it will definitely not be Baal. Don't even dream about it. The hero absorbed the last drops of blood and decided to look at the reward for training. Chris gained immunity to blood loss, pain, amnesia, insight, and patience. Not bad, it wasn't that easy to strengthen mana on this floor. Chris's talent is mana, so he can increase it even though it doesn't normally increase. Thanks to progress, the second feature is unlocked. The hero was surprised because he already had gluttony. And in place of the second ability, there were question marks. Chris can already see his past body possessed by this feature. New unlocked feature, versatility. This talent allows you to master any skill. Technique does not matter. Skill adjustment is applied during training. Wonderful, with this feature, Chris is invincible. The title he had never been able to obtain before. The best title of the Almighty. The Lord of Evil is curious about the hero's statistics. Chris told me to forget about her, leave her alone and get lost. The hero moves on to the next stage. The Lord of Evil asks if he can join him. The next room should be a training area. Upon entering, Chris was asked to choose the weapon and class that suited him best. Once he makes his choice, he must break through the floor to move to the first level of the tower. In his past life, after learning about mana, Chris did not hesitate for a second and decided to become a magician. However, he suddenly grabbed the bow and asked the system to generate targets. Multifaceted, why didn't the hero immediately see the full potential of this skill? 3 targets appeared overhead. Chris hit the nail on the head the first time. He asked to generate more targets and make them able to attack too. Chris was warned that he still hadn't chosen a class and the target might be dangerous, but he didn't care. 5 target dummies appeared. They rushed towards Chris. He shot at them, but 2 targets still caught up with him. So the hero grabbed his sword and cut them down. Chris also demands that the system make the target stronger. Difficulty increased, more dummies created. But as soon as they appeared, the hero attacked them with a spear. However, there were still several long-range attack targets behind. These are the strongest dummies that can be presented at this level. Chris just laughed. In that case, he'd have to go back to the idea of becoming a magician. Our hero is faster than the targets, so he instantly destroyed them with magic arrows. Excellent. I wonder what else multifacetedness can show. It feels like Chris has been familiar with this skill for ages. He achieved the achievement of using at least one weapon from each category while being omnipotent. The multi-class reward is unlocked. Chris has been offered to choose it as his class. But he won't be able to choose it when he leaves the room. No, even though it's a multi-class, Chris can't lose his main advantage. Can't make it a main class. Then the hero said he was choosing multi-class as a subclass. However, this is impossible. Chris asked why. Subclasses will only be available after the 100th floor. Damn, the hero forgot about that. If Chris doesn't choose a class, he won't be able to go out. He thought he could use achievement points. The hero asked if he could use achievement points to unlock a subclass. The system was confused. It is unclear how a newbie knows about this. The currency that can be obtained through achievements is achievement points. Players can use points to make changes to the system. No point in asking how Chris knows about this. He wants to use the 5,000 points to unlock subclasses. He hopes it's possible. Possibly, but he doesn't have enough points. 5,050 points required. Chris has no choice. He will need Baal's help. He asks him to reveal his identity and talk to him. This is considered an achievement. Chris received 200 points for talking to the best demon. Baal asks if he did a good job. The hero begs him not to do it again. The evil ruler is hurt by this reaction. However, Chris wants to use the points to unlock subclasses. So his new subclass is a multi-class. The hero will be transported to the first level of the tower after the training room is destroyed. Well, it seems it's time for revenge. Magic enveloped the training room and Chris was transported to the first floor, the forests of Corolla. Players are in a panic. They don't know how they'll get to the top of the tower if the first level is already so difficult. They were attacked by an armed kobold. And then Chris arrived on the floor. The monsters would be his first prey. With one blow, he pinned the kobold to the ground. The remaining 2 monsters looked at him with fury. I wonder how much Chris would get if he ate them all. The boys are impressed. Just think, our hero defeated the kobold with one blow. They think he's a magician, but Chris defeats the monster with one kick. The guys have no idea who he is, but they offer to fight together. If they join forces? But then Chris just dryly told me to fuck off. If the guy touches even one kobold, he will die. The boys got scared and quickly ran away. It looks like the kobolds want to avenge their comrade. They started running towards Chris, but he killed one on the spot with his magic staff. The second one changed his mind about attacking and decided to run away. Does he really think the hero will let him? The kobold was hit in the back by a magic arrow. The system had just greeted us on the first floor. It was too late. Chris was already fighting. And now he's busy robbing. To move to the next floor, he needs to kill 7 more kobolds. A piece of cake. Chris can beat at least 100. Since he's already started, it would be nice to get the fighter achievement. If you kill a monster 1,000 times, you can get this achievement. In the past, Chris beat everyone to get all the achievements. He thought it was time for a snack. Through gluttony, the hero consumed the corpses of monsters. Chris sees the memories of this kobold, takes over his power. Now the hero can understand the language of kobolds. Chris's stats have increased to those of the 10th floor. Wait, class adjustment? He's multi-class, so he gets the benefits of every class. The kobold's memories suddenly began. The monster was in a hurry. He starts to get angry. He grabbed the poor family. Kobold had to hurry, otherwise it would hurt if they hit him. The preparations were complete. And then the kobold lord appeared. Chris is happy, the timing is perfect. The Lord of Monsters is the harbinger of a monstrous wave. The hero can get an achievement and level up at the same time. It would take an entire army to face them. Chris commanded the corpses to rise. He successfully changed his main class to a necromancer. The hero is all-powerful, so he has memories of his past life. Changing class is very easy. But that's not enough. There's still a hidden classroom, so Chris needs to go to the first floor. Several more kobolds emerged from the forest. Okay, the hero ordered his soldiers to kill everyone in their path. Thus, Chris defeated 10 monsters. He went further and finally found the right place. A hut. The hero looked inside. Fortunately, no one had touched this place. Chris told the skeletons to wait outside. I kicked the floor and a passage appeared downwards. Hidden classroom on the first floor. Necromancer. High class that allows you to absorb souls. Spiritual master. And the very first spiritual master is in the coffin of class change. Chris opened the lid and Vulcan took off sharply. The master asked if our hero was his descendant. Long time no see. Chris doesn't seem surprised at all. Vulcan tried so hard to scare him, it was even awkward now. Chris asked why a necromancer would be surprised at the sight of a skeleton. The hero has already read his journal. There is nothing to be surprised about anymore. The secret item, Vulcan's Spiritual Master's Journal. Of course, Chris didn't read it in this life. When he changed his class to a mage and lost all his items, he found the journal and returned to the first floor. And when Chris became a spiritual master, he failed to make Vulcan rise up. And our hero is liked by the spiritual master. Vulcan says Chris is better than that ill-mannered asshole who showed up 10 years ago. What a bastard. Maybe I should finish him off. No, better change class first. Chris says he'd like to change classes quickly. Vulcan apologizes, but the hero first needs to get to the 10th floor. The spiritual master class is higher than even the necromancer. First, you need to change your class again in the class change tower on the 10th floor, and only then come. The hero replied that he was already a necromancer and showed the information. Vulcan is delighted with such talent. Chris changed the class on his own without going up to the 10th floor. Yes, the hero is better than that scoundrel. Chris repeated the question whether he would change the master class or not. Vulcan just can't stop chatting. And finally, he began the ritual. Spiritual Master Vulcan. Long ago, before the tower appeared on Earth, he was one of the main walkers. Although he was the most powerful necromancer, he continued to look for ways to become even more powerful. Skin and bones are not enough. Is there anyone stronger? Instead of a lich or a death knight, Vulcan wanted to summon someone else. And then he found that very thing. The soul. Vulcan will call upon the souls of the dead and then be able to create one who will surpass all. In the end, he managed to create a new class, Spiritual Master. But his old body had exhausted all its strength and the Spiritual Master class was on the verge of extinction. So, Vulcan chose his final path. Use necromancy on oneself, hoping that descendants will honor one. In order for Vulcan to find a walker to follow in his footsteps, he became half NPC. Finally, Chris got a new class. The scoundrel Vulcan mentioned was the second, and our hero will be the third spiritual master. He says to use the soul vessel to catch souls. Yeah, thanks. Chris already has one. The hero's first victim will be Vulcan. The hero has already completed all the preparations. He will not fail twice. Vulcan congratulated his descendant, and now tells him to conquer the tower and glorify his name. That's exactly it. Chris tells him to do it himself. Vulcan shouts that he forgot about the promise written in the journal. It's a bad habit to pass on your work to others. Chris will fix that for free. The hero approached and began collecting the soul. But does he really think that Vulcan will allow his soul to be taken? He knows this well from his past descendant, so he just laughed and dodged. However, Vulcan, trying to leave, ran into an invisible wall. He found himself sealed by magic. Chris asked for an opinion, quite convenient. Using the magic wall, a low-class spell, he created a personal prison for Vulcan. The skeleton screams that Chris won't get away with this. He'll break this simple spell in an instant. But did the hero say that this was all? Chris scattered mana stones along the way. He uses magic to activate them. Vulcan said he could easily break the spell, but will he be able to do it before Chris catches him? The skeleton doesn't understand who is in front of him. How can a walker from the first floor have such abilities? Chris failed in his past life, but he definitely won't miss Vulcan in this one. The hero took off his hood and asked if he was still the second spiritual master or could he be considered the third. Vulcan immediately recognized Chris Morris. But before he could say or do anything, the hero absorbed him. The skeleton is sad. Chris tells him not to get upset. Now that he is with our hero, all the dreams of the spiritual master will come true. The Lord of Evil is watching. The demon who watches death is interested in Chris's class. Gods and demons cannot enter the class change location. The hero will show you soon. Just don't bother him. It seems he won't need the skeleton army anymore. Chris ordered the skeletons to disappear. And then he told the new spirits of monsters to rise. They probably can't speak either. Suddenly, Vulcan's voice was heard. He is outraged that Chris dares to use him as a spiritual soldier. The hero sees him in this guise for the first time. Vulcan must have been handsome in his youth. The spirit screams that it will not leave this way. Let Chris not dare to underestimate him, the first spiritual master. But then Vulcan began to fall and began to choke. Let him not overdo it. He is alive, thanks to Chris's mana. If the hero cuts off access, the spirit will immediately dissipate in the wind. Vulcan is not going to obey like a faithful dog anyway. However, he has no choice. What Vulcan did to those who refused to obey him? Yes, he turned their souls into a ball and swallowed them. Vulcan hasn't forgotten Chris's specialty. He can't believe the hero still has that crazy skill. Gluttony! If Vulcan does not obey, the hero will simply absorb him. Okay, he asked what Chris was going to do now. Didn't he figure it out yet? The hero pointed to the castle and said that they needed to get rid of that bastard, the Kobold Lord. Chris entered the palace grounds and the guards immediately raised their weapons. However, the hero's spirits quickly dealt with the obstacles. There were also armed monsters on the roof. 30 ghostly kobold soldiers. They are no match for Chris anymore. And anyway, he is not going to sit idly by. The hero demands to be brought to his master. So Chris was getting closer and closer to the lair of the conqueror. The Kobold King told the servants to quickly prepare the offerings. The palace guards didn't have time to do anything. Chris was able to twist their heads off with his bare hands. Then he took out a dagger and made his way faster and faster to the lair, killing monsters along the way. Hidden class is great. Chris sensed an aura from the room where the Kobold Lord was located somewhere nearby. The Lord of Evil supports the hero by waving lightsabers. Chris doesn't need the support of an old man with hairy legs. He will win either way. The Kobold Lord immediately began the sacrifice. Until he, the demon who watches over death, is satisfied, one cannot stop. The victim was still alive, but the Kobold Lord demanded the next one. The servants dragged the girl in. The Kobold Lord grabbed her, examined her, and said that she would be better than an ordinary human. But suddenly someone shot him in the arm. Our hero was visible at the top of the room. Chris asked what they were doing here. Were they making a sacrifice? Well, it doesn't really matter. The kobolds are screwed anyway. Here comes the uninvited guest. And judging by the Kobold Lord, it's clear that he's the leader of the scum. The monster shouts that he is Callum, the king of the kobolds, and demands to be shown respect. However, he seems a bit arrogant for a first-floor monster. Let him make Chris do it. The girl doesn't know what's going on, but the Kobold Lord is distracted by this man. She realized that this was her chance, broke free from the clutches of the monsters, and began to run away. The Kobold King asks the demon who watches over death to give him power. He threw a corpse bomb at her. The girl ran with all her might, but unfortunately she slipped and fell. She will not allow herself to die. And then Chris destroyed all the thorns with his fist. He just took her and beat her off. The girl started to thank him, but the hero told her to forget and just run away from here. However, Chris noticed her horns and realized that she was a goblin. Goblins are powerful creatures that live on the 100th floor. They have no reason to go any lower, especially for a single person, before he even reaches adulthood. It seems that something happened on the 100th floor. Chris needs to save her so that he can ask her about everything later. The Kobold King is outraged. How dare he interfere with the sacrifice to the Almighty? Chris tells the girl to hide somewhere if she doesn't want to die. He won't stick up for her twice. Now the master tells him to try to repel this blow. A fresh corpse will be even more powerful. Several bombs were fired at Chris at the same time, but they all exploded prematurely. The monster is slow and has too little control over mana. Chris punched him in the face. It's a shock that a walker from the first floor has such strength. Chris asks why the king is hesitating. They just started. And then the monster screamed at the top of his voice to the demon, watching death to save him right now. A river of blood filled the entire room and a huge bloody golem appeared from it. How did the Kobold King manage to summon such a high-level creature? The golem grabbed Chris and slammed him into the ground. The Kobold King laughed proudly, saying that this was his most powerful ritual. And then the hero asked if the kobold even understood who he was talking to. Now Chris will introduce him to his ritual. The spirits stroked the golem and tore it apart from the inside. Our hero destroyed such a fashionable creature in a second. Even for monster lords, creating golems is not easy. Chris asks the death-watching demon Boone if this was his doing. Boone nods silently, and the evil lord looks on with disdain. Boone was curious about what Chris could do as a spiritual master. He summoned the blood golem when he saw Chris fighting one of his followers. And the Kobold King was just a puppet. He ran out of mana, that's expected. Boone specifically summoned the golem. Kobold can't believe it, and screams that the demon will take revenge better than his death. That would be nice. Chris has something to tell him. The kobold spirits began to consume their former king. Chris lifted him into the air. Boone's toy was finished. The demon shouldn't have decided to test the hero, he'll regret it. And anyway, Chris will make sure he pays for what he did. Boone laughs heartily, saying that he likes it. With a snap of the hero's fingers, the king of the kobolds was dead. His soul left his body and decided to run away. But Chris quickly grabbed her. Actually, they're not done yet. Creating a soul sphere is one of the basic skills of a necromancer. This skill allows you to collect souls and create medicines. Well, Chris is finally getting his fill. He's swallowed the soul of the Kobold King. However, it wasn't as cool as he expected. It would be useless once the hero reached the 50th floor. At that moment, the goblin girl thanked him and introduced herself. Her name is Leah. Chris says not to worry, he just came to sort things out with the Kobold Lord, but he still needs to thank him. The hero asked Leah what she would do if he turned out to be a bad guy. He could kill her and sell her. The girl replied that in that case, measures would have to be taken. A typical goblin. They are very persistent when it comes to promises or revenge. Then Chris asks to answer one question. How did the one who was supposed to be on the 100th floor end up here? And then Leah told that the goblin village was attacked. In the tower, goblins are quite powerful creatures. Even walkers have a hard time competing with them. Just don't tell me it's one of the four great beings. The source of power is giants. The source of magic is dragons. The masters of dark energy are demons. The wings of vengeance are angels. These creatures keep the entire tower under control. Only one of them could have disturbed the goblins like that. Or someone who had managed to enlist their support. Or maybe the Star Nine. It could be the work of someone who is related to the squad. Chris got mad at those bastards again. Leah asked if he was okay. The hero replied that everything was fine and he would go. And I would advise her to do the same. She's not going to stay here among pools of blood. If possible, Leah would like to go with Chris. She is still young, but you can take her with you. The hero warned that he would be busy, so he would not protect her. Leah assured that she could take care of herself. And then Chris reminded her that she had just been almost killed by a kobold. The girl said she just let her guard down. Okay, the hero let her go with him. It's probably best to change clothes. It's better not to attract attention with bloody things. And then, right above the corpse of the Kobold King, an equipment icon appeared. Putting on his cloak, the heroes set off on their journey when they came across a magic circle. Vulcan emerged from it and announced that he was finished. There was not a single kobold left within the castle. Chris praised him for his excellent work. Leah asked in surprise who it was. Vulcan did not expect her to see him. The girl replied that some goblins have a connection with souls. Wow, it looks like Leah is a special goblin. You can use gluttony and absorb her abilities, but it's too early. Better to train her a little. Suddenly, a system message appeared. Destroying the monster lord may cause a wave. After accepting the quest, all safe areas on the first floor will be inaccessible. Chris is delighted. Vulcan and Leah hope he's not going to accept the assignment. But if the hero had not intended to, he would not have gone all this way. The evil lord thinks it's reckless, and Boone will give Chris a reward if he gets the first rank. Is this really how he tries to make an appeal? Great! The hero will make a decision when he sees the reward. Vulcan can't believe it. Chris decided to die. He knows that Chris would rather have him dead because then he would be completely free, but the hero replied with a creepy smile that Vulcan would be his servant even after death. The hero confidently agreed to the task. Kobolds attack the entrance to the village. All safe zones will be inaccessible. The players are confused. They are outraged that some idiot caused a wave of monsters. They are all going to die here. One guy shouts to those who have completed the task to quickly go up to the second floor. But the guys didn't have time to do anything. The wave of monsters began. Now, no one will escape. Dozens of kobolds ran out of the portal. Suddenly, Chris appeared in the sky. He said that if anyone touched even one monster, he would get rid of them all. The hero went to meet the crowd of kobolds. People are shocked. They warn that it is dangerous. Chris commanded all the spirits to rise. Necromancer on the first floor. The guys don't understand how he got this class. Chris carefully monitored how the spirits dealt with the kobolds. Leah asked if she could try to kill too. The hero told her to hurry. He didn't think his army would leave her anything. Leah has an idea. She took a sword out of the sphere. The girl cut the monster down with one swing. This is definitely not an easy sword. This young goblin handles it so skillfully. She must have been the target. Suddenly some guy called out to Chris and asked who he was to make a wave. He himself is Liam from the White Swallow Guild. It looks like Chris hasn't heard of this one. Liam said that the famous guild of the Pelin siblings is the Holy Land, and the White Swallow is their daughter guild. Chris's expression changed at the mention of Pelin's brother and sister. Liam says that his older brother is in the White Swallow, and they also want to reach the 10th floor. He sees that Chris is not bad. If Liam talks to his brother, our hero will be able to join. Chris apologized, but no. The guy behind him was taken aback. Just in time. The hero needed to find out something. Meet me when the wave is over. I'll have to ask Liam a few questions. The other guys are indignant. They are all comrades, and Chris intimidates people just because he's a little stronger. The hero asked why not. Isn't it all obvious? These guys are not capable of hitting, killing, or stealing anything. There is no need for that on Earth. In the tower, power is essential. Liam demanded to be released. The spirit threw him to the ground. He must listen carefully, or he will die. Chris spared him because there is something to find out. The hero told Liam to stay away from him, otherwise he would really like to punch him. Friends ask Liam what he will do. Will he really not even answer anything? And then the guy said to run. If Chris catches them, they're done for. Finally, Chris and Vulcan joined the fight. They jumped into the huge crowd of kobolds. The monsters surrounded them. Chris gave orders, he would fight back, and Vulcan would watch. They summoned an army of skeletons that bit into the kobolds' necks. Chris tells Vulcan to turn all the monsters into skeletons. Now you can play. The hero went into close combat with his sword. Leah didn't waste any time either. She dealt skillfully with the kobolds, but there were too many of them. She didn't manage to keep track of everything. One of the monsters jumped and wounded her from behind. However, compared to what Leah had to endure when her home village burned, this is nothing. She began to kill the kobolds with even greater fury. After some time, she became exhausted and fell down from exhaustion. And behind her, she could hear explosions, roars, and sword swings. It's amazing that Chris is only on the first floor, and already with such force. Lip needs to stay close to rise higher so she can avenge the village. A kobold would have pounced on her at any moment, but Vulcan quickly backed her up. He asked if she was okay. Leah somehow got up and replied that she could handle it herself. This child is full of determination. Vulcan wonders what she went through. Suddenly, the goblin asked why he helped her. When Leah was running from the 100th floor, no one even tried to help her. She could only be glad that no one hurt her. She asked if Vulcan was helping her for profit, but he didn't know. Spirits must obey the orders of the spiritual master. This is their only task. So that's Chris's order. He told Vulcan to make sure that Leah didn't die and got away. Vulcan will go. If he doesn't help, the owner will start scolding him for idleness. Chris is the only one in this tower who helped Leah. She will definitely pay for this. The girl put on a mask of rage. Leah cut down the kobolds one by one. Now, looking at her, everything became clear to Chris. Those who attacked the village were looking for her and this sword. It's best to keep this a secret. If Leah finds out that she caused the destruction of the village, the system wrote that there was 1 minute left until the end of the wave. Vulcan screamed that the wave gate was shrinking and the last kobold emerged. Chris finished him off with a precise throw of his dagger. The gate closed, and the system congratulated the hero on his successful completion. Well, of course, no one doubted that Chris could handle it. Vulcan says he really is a monster. Leah is glad it's finally over. Chris asked if she was okay. She shouldn't use that skill when she was running low. The system announced a reward for the first, second, and third contribution. Perfect, Chris demands to see the reward quickly. More than 2,500 enemies were killed. The hero received the achievement Kobold Killer. All characteristics increased by 500 achievement points received. The characteristics have been especially improved, and achievement points will go to all characteristics. If Chris masters various skills through multi-classing and gluttony, the stats will increase infinitely. He can't wait. During the wave, the hero showed himself the best. In second place is Leah, and Vulcan is the third. He asked in surprise why him. On the contrary, it's good that he is too. Chris said to give the reward to him. Well, anyway, the spiritual soldier doesn't need it. Leah asked to take her award as well as a symbol of their future together. Chris was suspicious of this. He apologized, but he had been betrayed before. The hero said that she could go with him, but he didn't trust her. And the reward for second place in the wave is too great to take it without a drop of regret. Chris doesn't want to face betrayal again. Leah must prove that she can be trusted. Otherwise, we'll have to go our separate ways. Then she suggested that he take the goblin mask too. Vulcan was outraged that Leah wanted to give her mask to a stranger. This couldn't happen. The mask contains all the power of the goblin. They give it only to their one partner. Chris asked why Leah decided to give it to him. She replied that it was gratitude for him saving her twice, and proof that she would never betray him. But this mask is much more expensive. It seems there is another reason. And then Leah took a deep breath and said the word revenge. She didn't go into detail, but her village was burned. Leah tried to find survivors, but she never found anyone. She must be the last goblin. Since Leah is the only survivor, she must avenge the king's death. So she asks Chris to let her stay with them. Revenge. He is so similar to her. The hero took her items, saying that if she betrayed him, it would be the end for her. He doesn't care about this mask, so she shouldn't make too much of it. Leah is happy and excited, even calling Chris brother. Okay, he can call him whatever he wants. The rewards were a mana ring and a mana earring, and also a necklace of mana. All items reduce mana absorption. Vulcan smirked, saying they were good. Leah was surprised because it was just mana, the spiritual master explained. This is perfect for necromancers who use mana to create an army. With these items, Chris will be able to increase the quantity and quality of soldiers by 45%. The hero asked how much longer Boone would remain silent. Did he really think Chris had forgotten about his promise? Boone suggests going to another place. The settlement is empty. The heroes found some pub. People probably either fled into the forest or to the second floor. The place wasn't bad, so Chris started to urge Boone on. And then a ring appeared in front of him. It seems that luck is on the hero's side today. But then Chris, looking at the ring, noticed something. Leah and Vulcan can't wait to find out what's there. It turns out that this ring has demonic energy. At first, Vulcan thought Chris was joking. Demonic energy is the privilege of demons, power that can be used as a mana resource. The ring allows the use of demonic energy. Usually, to get demonic energy, you need to become a slave of the devil. Then it will gradually begin to pass into the body. With just one such ring, the power increases incredibly. Demonic energy increased by 10. The demon watching over death offers a handshake. Great, for such a thing, Chris can forget about Boone's jokes. It seems the hero is ready to conquer the tower. Vulcan and Leah congratulate him. Baal gets angry, offers a handshake. He can also give something if he wants a handshake. Vulcan says Chris is definitely out of his mind if he wants to rob a demon. Baal is worried, looks through the closet, drawers under the bed. The Lord of Evil thought and said that he would create a mission. Vulcan shouts that the mission from the demon is a chance. Chris is also a little surprised. Well, he will accept Baal's mission. He mutters that this was not his intention. Chris says he doesn't have to create if he doesn't want to. Baal shakes his head. It's too late to change his mind. Quest from Baal. To become famous before reaching level 100. For completing it, he will grant you anything. With such a gift, Chris can handle anything. The price for the contract is a handshake with Baal. But the conditions are not so simple. If the mission fails, the hero will become an apostle of Baal. But Chris still can't pass up such a chance, so he accepts the task and shakes Baal's hand. Leah asks the hero what he will do, whether to go to the second floor. No, they need to catch that idiot Liam and get as much information as possible. Chris tells Vulcan that he needs to be found. The hero has just assigned a spiritual soldier to him. The idiot is already quite far away, but Chris is sure that he is still on the first floor. If only he had said so right away, Vulcan would have left immediately, saying that he would return soon. In the meantime, Chris suggested that Leah talk on the way. He wants to know more about this mask. Simply put, this mask allows you to use goblin abilities. Leah about supernatural powers and spells. Personally, she can use not only supernatural powers, but also providence, allowing her to predict the future. Sad to hear. It would be great if Leah's abilities could help on the battlefield. Chris asked what she was staring at. Nothing. He's just weird. People from all over the world have traveled a long way to find that who possesses such abilities. They turned to the elders with a request to convey the gift of foresight. Many of them were worried about the future and tried to do everything possible to change their destiny. Chris asked if there was any point in running away from fate. If something is bothering you, you can just get rid of it. Then Leah thinks that her ability will suit him very well. Her skill is combat foresight. This ability is ideal on the battlefield. Leah will be quite useful. Chris suddenly hugged her tightly. How glad he is that she exists. Sword star, bow star, great thief, divine spear. If it comes to a fight, Chris will even have a chance to win. Leah could only timidly say the word, "Thank you." The evil lord takes a photo, and the nine-tailed fox bites her lip. Chris yells at Bal to stop following and get out. The hero began to apologize, but Leah calmed him down. She would be glad that she could help. Chris will make this mask justify itself and help Leah carry out her plan of revenge. The girl is very grateful. She hopes that everything will work out for them. Finally, Vulcan grabbed Liam and pinned him against a tree. His friends abandoned him and ran away. Now they will wait for Chris. The guy doesn't even imagine how hard it is for Vulcan to control himself so as not to kill. Chris finally arrived. Vulcan asked where he was. Liam couldn't calm down, he barely held him back. So the guy tried to escape. Then the hero drew his sword and stuck it right next to Liam's face. Chris will give him the sword back, but where should the hero stick it? Whether Chris puts it in his hands or stabs it in his stomach depends on how Liam answers the questions. The guy will tell you everything he knows about the White Swallow Guild. Liam told everything in a panic and was finally released. Vulcan asked if the hero would really let him go. Chris will destroy his guild anyway. But what about the guilds that are joined to the Holy Kingdom? Many small guilds probably work with them. There are many small guilds between the 10th and 200th floors. If Chris wants to crush them all, Vulcan says that would definitely get boring, but it could work in their favor. It's about Bal's quest. If Chris can destroy the guilds under the influence of the Pelin siblings, then the chances of completing the mission will increase. Then the hero asked if it was time to start moving towards the 10th floor. In the safe zone of the 2nd floor, everyone was talking about the three who had survived the wave. A crowd gathered to watch them. However, to their great regret, Chris had a mask on his face. The guys want to know if he has a guild and ask him to say his name. The hero remembered Bal's task. It is not worth revealing his name yet. And then Chris called himself a ghost mask. One guy was indignant and demanded an explanation, but the other stopped him. What if the ghost mask committed a crime before he got to the tower? He knows of many cases where people went to the tower to hide from justice. Many people in the tower hide their identities. Chris is sure he was able to attract their attention with the wave and the mask. He told Vulcan to move on. There was still much to do. And in one moment, Chris disappeared, heading to the 2nd floor. The floor quest is to defeat 10 regular kobolds and 10 warrior kobolds. It seems like the heroes can handle anything. Chris told Vulcan to take on this task. He immediately realized that the monsters needed to be brought in alive. The hero also asked to take Leah with him if possible. Chris needs to experiment with demonic energy. Let Vulcan come back soon if you're interested. He demanded that the hero not use all his energy until he returned. Leah asked if it was possible to complete tasks like this. If she doesn't like it, she can go catch them herself. Chris doesn't force her. Amazing! The hero will be able to use demonic energy. Let's see what comes out of this. Demon energy belonging to one of the most powerful races. Here it is. Chris started testing it with the ring. Leah screamed that there was a kobold in the bushes. Great, they'll try out the new power on him. The hero threw a demonic sphere at the monster, and Leah already thought that the kobold had dodged it. But no, such a strong blow simply could not fail to cause damage. The monster's body began to literally fall apart. Demonic energy is a weapon with incredible power. Not everyone can withstand it. This is what happens to those who encounter her even once. The kobold turned into dark fragments. It's inevitable. Chris picked up his soul. If he makes her a spiritual soldier, she will become an incredible warrior. The soul is destroyed. It cannot withstand the demonic energy. The energy density urgently needs to be lowered. Chris decided to lower it from 10 to 1. And so it all worked out perfectly. Leah says it still wasn't that easy. Chris, on the other hand, thought it was too easy. Since few people other than demons can control such energy, nobody knows how easy it is to use. Suddenly, Vulcan came and asked if this was created with demonic energy. Amazing! A spiritual soldier with demonic energy is incredible. He is worthy of the title of demonic spirit soldier. Vulcan says that his student did a great job. Does this mean that every time Chris captures a soul, it will need to be filled with demonic energy? It seems like it won't be that easy to use in battle. Wait, why would the hero need to summon it himself? Vulcan has more experience in summoning than him. He is able to summon souls at the same time and command them during battle, which is quite valuable. Vulcan is pleased that Chris paid tribute to his teacher. And then the spiritual master was enveloped by demonic energy. If Chris filled his soul with demonic energy, the fighters that Vulcan summons must transform into demonic spirit soldiers. His soul is stronger than a kobold's. Chris uses all the energy he has. Leah is worried, but the hero replied that the first spiritual master would not die from something like that. If Vulcan survives, he promises to tear the hero into pieces and eat him for breakfast. Let him reach his level first. If Vulcan becomes strong enough to challenge Chris, he'll be happy. The spiritual master flew up above the ground, proudly opening his wings. Vulcan is the hero's best spiritual soldier. He says Chris made a mistake. The hero created a creature many times stronger than himself. This is his biggest mistake. The volcano is angry? Great! Chris took the mask from Leah. He still needed an equal opponent. As he wanted, Vulcan will show the demonic soldiers he can summon. He set his new army on Chris. The hero used the power of the mask. Demonic spirit soldiers are much slower. Or does it only seem that way? It turns out that Leah can see all this. Chris quickly burned all the soldiers and headed towards Vulcan. It may be different now, but it used to be called the Death Star. The hero punched Vulcan in the face, and now Chris told him to calm down and listen to his orders. Leah was afraid for the old man and ran to him. Chris laughed, saying that it only works on normal people. The volcano actually feels pain. Leah asked if Chris had just used the mask's power. Yes, everything around seemed to be in slow motion. It was as if he had become the most powerful fighter. Speaking of which, Leah thinks it's just a side effect of her lack of experience. Chris is shocked. If this was just a side effect, then what is the purpose of this mask? Leah already said that it is needed for combat foresight. With it, you can not only see the enemy's slow actions, but also to anticipate the next step. Chris began to ask about how to learn this. However, Leah just goes and does it. The hero forgot. Surely she is considered a genius even among the goblins. It would be hard for her to teach him even if she asked him to. Leah asked if Chris was feeling dizzy, and all because if an inexperienced goblin used a special skill, he would experience a terrible headache or dizziness. This also applies to Leah. She can't use foresight whenever she wants. That's why I was worried, because Chris didn't even manage to activate the skill, and she keeps pressing on the sore spot. Leah says it wasn't on purpose. She thinks Chris will learn everything soon. He miscalculated, and it seemed that everything was playing into his hands. The hero was too inspired by the idea of becoming the strongest on the second floor. Anyway, Chris thanked Leah and patted her on the head. Vulcan is upset. He, the greatest spiritual master, could not even imagine that he would end up like this. Leah came up to him. Vulcan immediately hugged her, saying that at least she cared about him, unlike that idiot. Well, basically, she came to say that we need to bring more kobolds. We need one more, so Vulcan better hurry before Chris turns his soul into a ball and swallows it. That's how Leah relayed his words. Vulcan just wants to cry. The second floor mission was completed without problems. Afterwards, the third floor was cleared, and after him the fourth, and rumors about a guy named Ghost Mask have already reached the fifth floor. It seems like it's been 3 days since he entered the forest on the fifth floor. The guys are gossiping that only kobolds were strong enough for him. After the fifth floor, goblins with poisonous needles start spawning. And that's what happened. While Chris was busy with his own business, the goblins shot at him. However, Leah quickly cut the needle, and Vulcan's demonic soldier quickly dealt with the goblin. Leah stopped the monster in time. He was trying to attack Chris. It was necessary to get rid of him altogether. Wait, something's wrong here. There's an evil smile on Leah's face. What the hell is going on with her? Vulcan asked if she was okay. Leah woke up and shouted that yes. She didn't understand why she was holding the sword and laughing. The guys waited a long time. Chris had just finished preparing. There will be a wave of monsters today. Fourth floor, the night before entering the fifth floor. The heroes are sitting by the fire and chatting. After the fifth floor, goblins start appearing instead of kobolds, and Chris will be able to get the Goblin Slayer achievement. Vulcan says that you can't attack them just because you want to. Nobody knows when and on which floor the master will appear. But Chris isn't going to hunt the Goblin Lord. And does he need to? He knows how to manually create a wave. Vulcan and Leah are shocked. If it were possible, everyone in the tower would already know about it. Chris found out about it completely by accident. I think it was between the third and fourth floors. When the hero climbed the tower, a crack appeared. That's when he learned about this method. Each floor has a central area where monsters spawn. If you find it and redirect your mana there, monsters will start appearing just like during the wave. Vulcan thought, Chris won a lot from this and no one knows, but in general he will try for the first time. Monsters above the 300th floor are much stronger than goblins. Even 4 great creatures couldn't stop such a wave. He didn't know when it could be used, and once he found out, It couldn't be used. Yes, but now it's a little different. To become stronger, Chris will create as many waves as possible. People didn't understand what kind of earthquake it was inside the tower. And then the gates opened. No one saw the wave on the first floor. A horde of goblins ran out towards the people. No one even warned them, so they started running away in panic. However, the goblins began to shoot their poisonous needles. Naturally, not everyone was able to dodge, and from this paralytic poison, people cannot move for some time. The guy wanted to save his friend, but the monsters were approaching at cosmic speed. He didn't even make it to the 10th floor. He couldn't even imagine that he would die here. Chris absorbed all the monsters with his ring. He told the guy to take the sent comrade to a safe place. The boy immediately recognized the ghostly mask. He shouts to the others that they are saved. Yes, Chris will save them so that they can survive and spread as many rumors about him as possible. He told his demonic soldiers to rise up and fight. Vulcan screams that it was he who actually created the soldiers, and Chris keeps pulling the blanket over himself. The hero told him to stop mumbling and make more soldiers, but suddenly an explosion was heard. The demonic spirit soldier is burning. A spiritual goblin could be seen emerging from the crowd. He can attack the hero's soldiers. If they don't get rid of him, then they can forget about the raid. Leah jumped from the roof straight into a crowd of goblins. Meanwhile, Chris sucked the souls out of the monsters. It's amazing that fire has such an effect on the soul. Using this technique on goblins is useless. The hero uses it wisely. He spread spiritual fire to all the monsters. Chris also praised Leah for her great work and told her to keep up the good work. However, she smiled again in a frightening way, and suddenly her sword began to emit light. Chris knew it was a difficult object, but he never imagined it would be this light. Leah was unrecognizable. Armor appeared on her body, and her gaze inspired fear in anyone. The light of the sword filled the entire sky, and the earthquake destroyed houses. Leah managed to destroy an entire village in an instant. What the hell? Is this really her sword? Suddenly, Leah started waving her sword and right next to Chris. He took off his hood and showed that it was him. Wouldn't he recognize it? However, the girl ignored him and attacked him directly. The hero had to fight back. This girl is very strong. She flew into the sky, leaving only the rubble of buildings behind her. The volcano wandered through this fog of dust and called to Chris and Leah. He managed to contact the hero via telepathy. The spiritual master asked how Leah was doing. Chris seemed to be okay, but something was wrong with her. The hero replied that she had almost knocked him down with her blow. No matter how you look at it, it still looks like he's colliding with the goblin leader. As for the wave, most of the monsters are already dead. Chris asks Vulcan to take care of the rest, and he put on a mask. Now he needs to deal with Leah. Chris rushed towards her, simultaneously using combat foresight. The intuition he developed while climbing 599 floors tells him that this sword is dangerous. He'll cut him into pieces. There are no eternal friends or enemies in the tower. Leah has a sad story, of course, but she'll have to say goodbye. Chris seemed determined, but he still had doubts, remembering how she called him brother. He swung the axe, but Leah stopped him with her bare hand. It looks like she used combat foresight. The girl laughed and threw Chris back, and then, dripping blood on the ground, he ordered to rise. Dozens of bony hands emerged from the ground. This is a wave of goblins resting among the rubble. The hero ordered them to attack. The spirits began to grab Leah by the arms and legs, but she cut them all down with one swing of her sword. Chris doesn't even see the soldiers hit. Is Leah using foresight now? She is too strong. Even the hero wondered how to defeat her. A huge blast wave threw him back. Leah looked like she was out of breath. No, her eyes are bleeding. Something is definitely wrong. If this is the side effect she was talking about, then Chris has a chance. The main thing is to make sure that Leah can't use foresight. Suddenly, she jumped onto the roof. Chris asked what she was doing. Was she not going to attack? And then she finally jumped down, pointing her sword at him. Chris quickly stepped back and told the goblins to rise up. The goblin's paralytic venom would be fatal even to Leah. He doesn't think she'll be able to dodge it without using foresight. Since she sees everything in slow motion, she slashes at the goblins around her with her sword. And then she actively started trying to hit Chris. Leah laughed when she finally managed to squeeze it, but then a goblin's paralyzing needle flew into her shoulder. If it weren't for the side effect of combat foresight, Chris wouldn't have succeeded. Namely, to shoot her with a poisonous needle from a blind spot through himself. Leah weakened and began to fall. Chris barely made it down in time to catch her. He can no longer feel his hands. It seems the paralytic poison is starting to work. Chris called one of the zombies and asked him to bring that poisonous needle. He absorbed the energy from her and gained resistance to paralytic poison. Wow, Leah's ability is really getting on my nerves. While she lay there without strength, she imagined herself and the sword in some space. Someone said that this time, she is the owner of the demonic killing sword. This man is surprised, because Leah is just a child. She asked who he was. He looked like a goblin. Well, the girl was partly right, partly wrong. Leah asked in surprise what he meant, and then he put a long sword to her neck to warn her about something. The next time Leah draws a sword without preparation, it will eat her. Leah woke up when Chris was carrying her somewhere on his back. The girl asked in a weak voice where they were. The hero replied that they had just gotten out of the 5th floor and reached the village. This was the safe zone of the 6th floor. Leah was embarrassed and asked why Chris was carrying her. It was a shame that she didn't remember. They went to bed for the night. After checking their equipment and stamina level on the 6th floor, the heroes will head straight to the 10th. There is a large city on the 10th floor of the tower. To get there, you need to defeat the boss. Leah knows this is a great warrior of the orcs. Considering his fighting power, he can be considered the master of monsters. The girl suggested going as soon as they recover, but no. Now Leah will have to go her own way. She asked Chris, dumbfounded, what was he talking about? Was he really leaving her? The girl does not remember at all what happened on the 5th floor during the wave. At some point, the memories disappear. Chris said that she has a demon sword whose skills are no worse than the ego sword. It gives incredible power, but in return, it devours consciousness. Leah lost her mind and attacked the hero. If she continues to rely on such an unpredictable power, she won't even live to the 100th floor. Chris gave her a task, without relying on the power of the sword, to reach the 10th floor on her own. Leah needs to become stronger instead of relying on strength. She assured him that she would definitely become strong enough to become Chris's invisible comrade again. And so, it's time to say goodbye. Leah thanked her for the robe. Chris advised her not to show that she was a goblin when she was moving around alone. There's no rush. He has a couple of things to do on the 10th floor, so he'll be there for a bit. Leah replied that she would catch up with Chris soon and then left. The hero will wait no matter how long it takes. A couple of days later, the 9th floor was cleared. These orcs are just big and are no different from ordinary ones. Chris himself, with his bare hands, killed monsters. It seems he has already got the hang of it. The hero tells Vulcan to remember to suck out souls. They need more demonic soldiers. Making waves has become a routine. Vulcan even enjoys it. He can't believe Chris is so cold-blooded. He didn't even remember Leah. What was he talking about? Chris wouldn't consider her his ally. If I thought she couldn't do it. She's strong. Leah will do anything for revenge. Now Chris told Vulcan to get busy and create more orcs. This wave won't be enough. More are needed. The spiritual master is furious. The hero seems to have no respect for adults at all. Doesn't he have parents? Well, actually, yes, he doesn't. Chris is an orphan who grew up in an orphanage. His friend Wade grew up there too. Vulcan became embarrassed and remained silent. Okay, he put his hand on the hero's shoulder, saying that he understood him. Chris asked what the reaction was. Vulcan tried to hug him, but he pushed him away so that they wouldn't feel sorry for him. As a result, the hero received the achievement Orc Killer. Now they have arrived at the 10th floor. To get to the center of the floor, you need to defeat the boss. If defeated, the player will be returned to the 9th floor. Vulcan is surprised. He has never seen anything like this before. There's a leaderboard here. The guys all did it in a minute. Chris doesn't see Vulcan's name here. He was indignant that there was no hero either, and that in general half of the records here belonged to 4 great creatures with amazing skills. Then Chris asked why they didn't break the record. Vulcan grinned. Sounds great. So preparations for the battle began. The boss fight will start in a minute. Looks pretty doable. Chris tells Vulcan to use the demon soldiers to stop the boss. The hero began to summon a magical spear. It will show the power of a multi-class. The spell is an element. The spear has acquired various spells, such as Pierce, Agility, Critical Damage, and others. Chris will never forget this. The spell is demonic energy. There are only a few seconds left before the mission begins. The Great Orc has been summoned. Vulcan told her demonic soldiers to move forward, and Chris hit the boss with the spear of the god Odin. The monster was defeated in less than a second. This is an absolute record. The system asked the hero to enter his name and he called himself Ghost Mask. The players were actively discussing the new record of the 10th floor. Leah perked up when she heard the name of the ghostly mask. She realized that she needed to work harder. Vulcan was happy that they had surpassed the great being's achievement. Even the greatest spiritual masters have a long way to go to achieve this. Chris suggested they go. They still had a lot of things to do on the 10th floor. They would wait for Leah. The auction is open. A certain man is very interested in the new celebrity, the Ghost Mask. The 10th floor is the first large city the walkers encounter. There is a portal to the ground there. People who abandoned the idea of reaching the top began to engage in trade and founded the largest city of the first 100 floors. Chris decided to sell the remaining items and buy a couple of potions. The ban on auctions is lifted, but the city market continues to thrive. There are people living normal lives here. Not everything can be bought at auction. Chris also registered for it. Merchants offer products from the Golden Lich, weapons from the Golden Lich's workshop, and also a rest in the Golden Lich's hotel. Vulcan asks who the Golden Lich is, so he doesn't know. The Golden Lich Company is one of the best in the tower. It appeared several years ago, and the Golden Lich is the richest man in the tower. No one knows his real name. He owns an incredible amount of gold. They say that everything in the tower passes through him. Chris said he had some things to do. We need to find a sponsor. Vulcan asked which one. He's looking at it right now. These are all emblems belonging to the sponsor. Yes, Vulcan got it right. The Golden Lich will be Chris's sponsor. The heroes came to the company of the Golden Lich. Here you can find everything that can be bought for money. Weapons, items, potions, information. You can buy and sell anything in the company of the Golden Lich. Chris was given waiting ticket number 18. Halcyon is in charge of the third counter. He asks how he can help. Chris wanted to buy something. The guy asked how he could address our hero. Chris took out a mask, saying that it should be clear. The guy's face changed, and he became very scared. Chris said to be quiet. He's wearing it for a reason. The hero told Halcyon to count the money. 3,000 gold coins. Chris earned all of that with the help of waves. The boy timidly asked what the ghost mask was going to buy with all this money. Chris answered briefly, a meeting with the Golden Lich. Halcyon decided that the guy in front of him had gone crazy. Could the ghostly mask outside the tower have been the culprit? Chris asked what was wrong. Halcyon said that you can buy anything here. The guy is sorry, but this deal is impossible. There are two reasons. First, Mr. Leach is busy. Chris asked about the second reason. This may sound rude, but he brought too little money. 3,000 gold is a considerable sum, but it is not worth the master's time. It turns out that it won't work out that way. Halcyon was about to ask Chris to leave the company, but he interrupted him. The hero asked how much he had to pay for a meeting with the manager. Vulcan says Chris is a terrible person. He asked some unknown employee to arrange a meeting with the head of the company. What did Halcyon do to him? Then Chris asked if Vulcan had any other ideas on how to meet the Golden Lich. If there are any, the hero is ready to accept any comments. He and Vulcan went to the door and knocked. Chris said it was a ghost mask, and they let him in. He opened the doors wide and a man stood before him. This is the manager of the 10th branch of the Golden Lich Company, the Puppeteer. He is glad to meet the newcomer. Chris is eager to meet Mr. Leach, but he doesn't seem to be here. The Puppeteer feels sorry, but for that kind of money... The hero interrupted him. Then he would suggest doing something else. Chris says to call the Golden Lich here. When he sees the hero, he himself will want to become his sponsor. The Puppeteer was taken aback. Some newbie still had the nerve to offer some deals. He had heard about the ghost mask. However, in any case, he shouldn't speak so casually about the master. Using the puppet ability, the Puppeteer can pull strings and control people. He's sorry, but Chris will have to leave this place. Suddenly, the hero grabbed the strings and pulled them hard. He was ready to bet that the Puppeteer had no less impudence. The manager is shocked. The hero removed his skill, which works even against walkers from the 18th floor. Okay, then the Puppeteer will show you something else. He clasped his hands and he and Chris found themselves in the water. The Puppeteer was sure that the hero was seeing something like this for the first time, however. Chris immediately said that this was the sphere of the mind. An infinite sphere that separates the soul and mind from the body. How does a fighter on the 10th floor know about the sphere of the mind? Then the Puppeteer thinks the guy knows that the laws of reality do not apply here. This is a dimension where you need to use experience and soul power to fight. If Chris can defeat him, the Puppeteer will try to arrange a meeting with the Golden Lich. The threads tied the hero's limbs. But since experience and strength of soul are needed here, a manager is not his opponent. It seems the Puppeteer hasn't yet realized that this ability doesn't work against Chris. The hero has severed all the strings. The manager doesn't understand how he even knows about this ability. Chris has the mental prowess of a fighter above the 100th floor, maybe even the 200th. Okay, the puppeteer admits that they are on the same level. And then the hero was surrounded by hundreds of puppets. This is a whole army. Experience plays the main role here. The puppeteer raised all these puppets through experience. In order to break through the 100th floor, he redesigned them in this way, so that they become stronger as mana is transferred. These enhanced puppets are as strong as a 50th floor walker. Once I got into the sphere, the winner was immediately clear. The puppeteer sent his entire army against Chris. He thought it was the end. Wounds in the mental realm do not reflect in the real world, so there is no need to worry. The puppeteer was about to leave when an explosion behind him scattered his puppets. It was the magic of Lich, the boss of the 100th floor. All the puppets were absorbed. It's not as easy as Chris thought. Even in the realm of the mind, it will take time for the dead to transform. It seems the puppet army knows what a real army is. Now is the time to take a look. Chris ordered them all to rise up. Now that's what he calls a real army. As soon as they entered the sphere, the winner was immediately clear. Pathetic puppets, that's why they lost. Lich, Dullahan, and others whose names the puppeteer doesn't know. Are these really all the bosses of the upper floors? The manager screamed, asking who the hell Ghost Mask was, but he was about to be swallowed up by the spirits. Suddenly, everything became as before. The puppeteer did not understand when they managed to return. After all, he did not close the sphere. Surely Chris couldn't have taken control of the sphere? The hero told the manager to stop whining and get up because he shouldn't forget about the deal. The puppeteer must arrange a meeting with the Golden Lich. Chris gave him a letter, and he said to send it to the gentleman. Not to tell the manager about this since he lost. But if the Golden Lich doesn't respond to the letter, the puppeteer won't be able to help anymore. Chris said not to worry. The gentleman will definitely answer. As soon as the puppeteer receives an answer, he will let you know. He and Halcyon bowed and wished Chris a good journey. The heroes left the building. The sun was already setting, so Vulcan suggested finding a place to stay for the night and rest. But Chris replied that they still had a lot of things to do. Vulcan was surprised and asked if they needed to go anywhere else. The heroes said that there was no point in wasting time sitting around waiting for an answer from the Golden Lich. The two girls decided to work as guild members in the White Swallow building, since they had to while away some time here. It all happens in the lobby of the 10th floor. One of the girls reached the 57th floor. The blonde thought she would get new gear when she broke her own record for the month. She is outraged and cannot understand why they are hanging around in the lobby on the 10th floor. After all, what kind of idiot would break into a guild building that is under the protection of the Holy Kingdoms? Suddenly, the doors swung open. It was Chris who entered. They immediately stood in their place, asking what brought him to the White Swallow. The hero replied with a smile that moving up the tower was so difficult, so he wanted to join the guild. The girls breathed a sigh of relief. They were so surprised. Wait, they realized something. If they recommend a newcomer as a new member of the guild, they will be able to concentrate considerable power in their hands. They invited Chris inside with forced smiles and asked if anyone had recommended this place to him. No, he came here because he heard that this guild is quite popular. The girl smiled sarcastically. So this newbie doesn't know anything. The blonde asked to demonstrate her abilities. Chris asked for a coin. With a light touch of his fingers, he bent it in half. The girls were surprised. Chris also said that he knows the basics of magic. For example, it can create fire. The girls were dumbfounded and said that he could do a lot of things. They turned away to confer. The skills of a newbie are not so important now. They can take him for themselves, train him, then he will become a real oligarch. The blonde also noted that he was handsome. All Chris needed was to buy himself a little time. Suddenly, one of the guards ran in, shouting that something very bad had happened. There, a spiritual monster has gone crazy and is destroying the village. The guild has already called everyone who has climbed above the 50th floor. The girls are urgently told to leave. It was an awkward time, but anyway, they told Chris to stand here. They would sort it out quickly and be right back. The doors of the building have closed. Now it's time to transform into a ghostly mask again. People flee the shopping street and panic. It is very dangerous. Everything that is nearby disappears without a trace. And even the attacks from fighters above the 50th floor are useless. Vulcan awkwardly says that he is furious. People say how cringy he is. He knows it himself. He hasn't had to pretend to be someone else for decades. Fucking Chris! He made the first spiritual master embarrass himself. Vulcan will never forgive him. At this time, the hero broke through further into the building, killing the guards. He still can't find the right office. One of the workers came out to the noise to find out what was going on. He screamed in horror when he saw the ghostly mask in front of him. Chris grabbed the guy by the neck and looked around. There are quite a few books in this room. It looks like it's here. The hero said he was looking for something. The White Swallow Guild is connected to the Holy Kingdom. Chris wants a list of the remaining guilds with their exact locations so he can find and destroy them. The guy, barely able to speak, asked if the hero was worried about his safety. After all, he already had 2 enemies in the Star 9. Chris thanked him for his concern, but perhaps the guy should worry about someone else. If he doesn't give the hero the necessary information right now, he will die. The guy pointed his weak hand at the table. Chris thanked him for not wasting his time. The hero abandoned the guy and immediately headed to the table with papers. Taking one of the lists, Chris saw the names of Pellin's brother and sister. So these are all the members of the guild. Wait, Kane and Carmen, they'll all be trampled by Chris sooner or later. He'll get rid of them all. And from the brother and sister first. Chris set fire to the office and then left. The Golden Lich received a report from the puppeteer on the 10th floor, which was quite surprising. As I picked up the folder, a letter fell out of it. It is strange that the letter was sent separately from the general report. After reading it, the Golden Lich was furious. How did the Ghost Mask know about this? Ben Hollio, the head of the White Swallow Guild, says it's probably a burn caused by someone unknown. The witnesses who tried to do something are dead. The person who wanted to register looks suspicious. Ben asks what the criminal looked like. The girls from the guild answer that he was a thin man. The blonde said that he had an upturned nose and was cute, but the brunette said the opposite. His nose was flat and ugly. They were outraged by each other's words. And then it dawned on the blonde. Maybe it was the magic of a hallucination. Vulcan returned to his place to Chris. The hero praised him for his work. He said with a grin that there were many rumors about a scary ghost. Vulcan asked about Chris. No one recognized him for sure. The hero answered that, of course. It may be cheap magic, but it works in these places. All the people who saw him remembered different faces. But for some reason, Chris was empty-handed. He had to find information about other guilds. Chris pointed to his head. It's enough to save everything in it. The conversation was interrupted by a sudden knock on the door. Vulcan thought Chris had ordered room service, but how could he? The boys got ready and quietly approached the door. Chris counted to 3 and opened it. After this, Vulcan instantly chained the man who knocked. Chris looked in and was surprised. He saw this guy in the company of the Golden Lich. This is a scared Halcyon. He was sent by the puppeteer to convey that Mr. Golden Lich had arrived on the 10th floor of the branch. When Chris got there, he was met by an army of guards. He asked what was going on. The Golden Lich doesn't know how the hero knows the information in the letter, but it's commendable. Knowing the contents of the message, Chris still dared to appear before the Lich. He approached the hero, saying that he would have to pay dearly. No one in the tower should know the truth. Chris smiled under his mask. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. The Golden Lich told the servants to bring the hero to his office. The main thing is that he stays alive. The squad leader ordered everyone to line up. It was necessary to break Chris's attack at the very beginning. But before he could do anything, the hero hit him and pinned him to the ground. What kind of idiot would shout about his plans? Chris quickly dealt with the remaining servants. And then he caught up with the Golden Lich, swung at him, and offered to fight. The guy turned around and pointed his golden power at Chris. The hero began to defend himself with a shield against 1,000 gold coins. This skill requires gold and mana. This is a feature of the Golden Lich. Chris fought back and asked if that was all he could do. Of course not. A wave of coins, which are made from the gold of this branch, lifted Chris into the sky. Even he will receive mortal wounds after this. The Golden Lich exploded hundreds of coins around the hero, thinking he was finished. However, not yet. Chris has a spear to his face. He doesn't lose so easily in a speed fight. The Golden Lich pushed the spear away, saying that he could not be defeated with such pathetic methods. And if he wanted to, then... Chris interrupted, saying that he couldn't be killed. The Golden Lich did not listen to him, so he ordered his men to take him alive. The hero will tell him everything. The master said to follow him. They walked into a bright office. The Golden Lich loved money after all. And suddenly, Chris was pressed by a golden wave again. This space is completely isolated from the outside world thanks to the golden power of Mr. Lich. Even gods and demons cannot enter here. And now the Golden Lich demands to know who blabbed that he was the owner of the auction. The auction was a huge system that allowed items to be sold in the tower. However, she did not appear inside the tower by herself. Someone created it and led it. And that someone is him, the Golden Lich. If this becomes known, his company will collapse. That's why he demands to tell Chris. However, the hero replied that he lied. No one told him. The Golden Lich created a huge axe from golden energy. The hero, without one arm and leg, will still be able to speak. He swung as Vulcan had smashed the golden axe. This is a soul vessel. But the Golden Lich knows that this item can only be used by a spiritual master. Now he began to recognize the hero. Chris took off his mask, smiled, and told the debtor William that it was time to return the ordered amount. And the Golden Lich thought that our hero was dead. Chris said that the clearing of the 600th floor, the betrayal of the Star Nine, the gift of Baal, and the resurrection. Vulcan finally pieced together the puzzle of what had happened. To be honest, William can't be sure that this man is Chris. The hero was also surprised at first. The Golden Lich asked about his goal. First, he had to spend William's company money. He will have to sign a sponsorship contract. Chris talks about the company as if it were his. The hero replied that it was just as good as his. William was just a traveling merchant, and it was Chris who sold him the trophy obtained on the high floor of the tower. Our hero is the founder of the Golden Lich Company and its largest shareholder. William is shocked by this impudence. It feels like he's actually talking to Chris. The hero says it's him. If this is called a contract, then he will have to give William something too, since he really is Chris. The hero offered a conclusion. His conclusions after collecting all the information. Great. William will listen and pay. Chris said that the Star Nine had set him up on purpose, or someone talked her into it. They are all pretty strong personalities and wouldn't listen to each other. There are only 4 places in the tower that he can control. William is shocked. Chris speaks of 4 great beings. They want to maintain the superiority of their race. If another race develops a special species that reaches a high floor of the tower, then they will no longer be the strongest. That's why they strive to reach the very top or remove those who are capable of it. And those who join them, they will make rulers of the middle floors. But as Chris said, this is just speculation. At the moment, there are no victims other than him. The hero asked if William had heard about the They village on the 100th floor. Chris knows the only survivor from there. Her name is Leah, a young representative of the Oni tribe. Meanwhile, she trained without giving herself a minute's rest. But this is not enough to defeat him. Leah kept exceeding the boss fight time and couldn't get to the 10th floor. In order to meet her brother, she must become much stronger than she is now. That same spirit asks what Leah is muttering. She can use him after all. The girl wants to meet Chris as soon as possible. Let her trust the spirit and he will deal with the orcs in no time. No, Leah will not use the power of the dragon sword to kill. She promised Chris then. The girl herself must become stronger and asks not to interfere with her. It is strange to William that only a young girl and 1 sword were saved in that battle. A young child and a sword, so they were the target. Chris says that an entire race was killed for 1 girl. They tried to pluck the shoot. It can't be. William realizes that it could shake the entire foundation of the tower. But if this is true, then that's the end of everything. And Chris's goal is revenge. He will kill not only the Star Nine, but also the 4 great beings, and even the one who killed the Golden Lich's family. These words shocked William. He saw again the image of himself standing among the corpses of his relatives. He opened the space. Baal and Kumiho immediately wonder what the hero was talking about. Let them not spoil the atmosphere. Okay, William buys Chris's information. Excellent choice. Only the hero must prove it right here and now. The Golden Lich already half believed him. Chris asks if it's really necessary. William the merchant. Trust is money. If you trust half, you will neither sell nor buy anything. How annoying. Chris called Baal. He asked the evil lord to act as his guarantor and offered a handshake. Baal is outraged. What kind of guarantee is this after 1 squeeze? If 3 times, he will think about it. Okay, Chris agreed. What to do? Baal tells William that this is the one he is thinking of. He can rest assured. The Lord of Evil swears by the truth. The Golden Lich laughed. Now there's no escape. He will believe the hero. William extended his hand and told the ghostly mask that he was glad to meet him. Chris hoped that the day would come when they could call each other by their real names and shook hands with the Golden Lich. Well, the hero has his first request to the sponsor. If it can be bought with money, William will immediately get it for him. Chris needs every weapon in the tower, an extra. William asked why he needed a weapon. He was a spiritual master. Was he really going to start a war on the 10th floor? Chris showed his multi-class. Golden Lich is shocked that this is the name of the class. It means that the hero can do everything. The weapon he sees for the first time he will use as if he had been using it for many years. If this is true, then Chris is stronger now than he was in the past. Sure, he is weak now, but his potential is unmatched. In that case, it was William's job to unlock that potential. He immediately called the puppeteer. The guy came in asking if they were done. The Golden Lich said to buy all the weapons there are on the 10th floor. He also told the manager to add the names of other companies so that it wouldn't look suspicious. And he also handed over the card, asking to pack it as for a VIP. William and Chris waited in the office for a while, and the puppeteer finally returned. He brought everything they asked for. The hero asked how everything was if it was only one suit. Chris asked for a lot of things besides weapons. William assured him that everything was here. This garment is called the interdimensional cloak. Its lining is connected to the subspace. Any objects can be stored here. Temperature, size and color can be changed depending on the user's wishes. Also, magic overlays for protection. And if you put accessories there, the effect will be activated automatically. This is a very rare item. There are only a few of them in the tower. William says to use it with care, but he will have to be careful to cover Chris's expenses. This guy named Liam came back from a raid with his friends. They thought they were going to die. We didn't get the achievement, but thanks to Liam's items we stayed alive. But they spent everything on the 10th floor. The guy asks how they're going to climb the tower now. Liam says not to worry. There's a white swallow branch on the 10th floor. Once they get to his brother, they'll have money. And that idiot from the first floor looks like he became a ghost mask. Liam is furious that he dared to threaten him. The phantom mask will pay. Liam tells his boys to move forward. It's time for their revenge. But when they approached the White Swallow Guild building, they discovered that it had burned down. The other guilds have disappeared to the 30th floor, and Liam's brother has lost contact. The friends don't know what to do now. It's already evening, and they have neither strength nor money. They can't reach the 30th floor. They ask Liam to at least say something, because they trusted him and started all this. Besides the fact that his brother is in a good guild, he himself can't do anything special. What will they do now? All Liam wants is for these useless bastards to shut up. And what about them? They're no good. Without him, they wouldn't have even gotten to the 10th floor. Since that's how it turned out, we need to get rid of them. Suddenly, a small fox ran up to them. It seemed like something had happened to her because she was wheezing as she ran. Liam said that if she was looking for food, they didn't have any and she should get lost. But the fox only ran closer to him and began to breathe heavily. Liam was indignant and demanded that he leave him alone. And then he kicked her, calling her a stinking creature. Well, that's it, the poor animal is caught. Liam is already all stressed out. He started kicking the fox with all his might, taking out all his anger on her. Liam screams that he can't do anything. Everything is just confused, and there are only some stinking creatures around him. Suddenly, someone threw a sword, which finally cut off his leg. Chris started to approach, demanding that he stop. If the guy didn't stop, it would take longer to heal. Liam screams in pain, asking who the bastard is. The ghost mask replied that he was the owner of the fox that the guy was kicking. Earlier, Chris told Vulcan that they were going to the last place, the Class Change Tower. They needed spiritual strength. Vulcan asked why, since the hero is already a spiritual master. Chris replied that his class is some kind of bug, which appeared from the memories of a past life. He does not yet have spiritual powers obtained through training. Of course, Vulcan didn't even think about it. At first, they planned to have a good rest with the Golden Lich's money. Suddenly, the system wrote that the nine-tailed fox senses something, and Baal said to look to the side. Chris came up and asked what the kumiho was worth. The nine-tailed fox was asking for help. She says that her cub is in danger. So, the hero immediately goes there and chops off Liam's leg. Chris is the owner of the fox that he kicked. The hero didn't think he would meet a kumiho cub in such a place. He also got a quest, and unexpectedly, luck smiled. You need to save the deity apostle and then take care of her. The reward is the fox item and then an increase in intimacy with the kumiho. Looking at Chris, Liam thought it was a demon mask. The hero also thought he had seen this guy somewhere. Liam asks what dirty tricks to provoke him. He told the boys to hit the hero. But Chris suddenly disappeared, having picked up the cub. He asked if Liam even knew what it was. It was the last piece of luck he'd ever had. Why the hell does the guy need to know that? He plans to do the same thing to Chris's leg. The hero asks the kumiho what to do with this guy. The nine-tailed fox asks to kill them. These guys were just the first to attack. Better let Liam take what he lost. Chris threw his severed leg at him, and then he caused the corpse to explode. So this means that this is the Kumiho cub. Now we need to think about what to do with it. First, we need to come up with a name. Chris can't call the fox cub. If you shorten fox cub, you get Deli. Vulcan said that when she grows up, the first thing she will do is smash Chris's head, and Kumiho nodded in confirmation. Then the hero is open to ideas. Vulcan will show true mastery in coming up with names. Ho-Ran means to grow in light. He asked how about that name. Chris is silent. Vulcan asks to say so if he doesn't like something. The hero will simply call Lee Miho, or Miho for short. This is best. Does he really think that this picky fox will be satisfied with this? But the baby seems to like it. Part of the quest is completed. Chris saved the baby Kumiho, Miho, and gets a reward. And it was a fox mask. When using it, you can use the abilities of a fox. If the main owner of the mask becomes stronger, the mask's abilities will also become stronger. It looks like a mask of the Oni race. The fox's skills include various abilities. But the most important thing is charm. There is no better skill than to suppress the enemy without even touching him. The Gumiho reminds that the quest is not yet over and asks for the health of the cub to be restored. To do this, you need to feed Miho 999 pieces of raw liver. If it should be raw and fresh, I'll have to hunt myself. Well, if you consider it the price for the mask, there's nothing you can do. Moreover, the level of intimacy with Kumiho will increase. Chris is waiting impatiently. Since the issue is resolved, Vulcan goes for a walk. As soon as morning comes, the hero will immediately go to the tower. If Vulcan is late, he can come there right away. He nodded and flew away. Suddenly, Vulcan felt a fabulous difference between the energies. He managed to see a certain figure with horns and an ominous manner. He is definitely from the dragon race. And suddenly, this man said that he wanted to destroy all the dragons without a trace. Vulcan is shocked. Dragons have such a love for their race that it borders on narcissism. They are very proud. But if he said so, it means he won't spare even his own. Oh shit, dragons are coming to the 10th floor soon. People whisper that this dragon has been standing there for several days in a row and muttering something incomprehensible under his breath. It's strange. It's been standing there for several days and the other dragons aren't doing anything to it. But why? Suddenly, the dragon looked straight at Vulcan. Well, it looks like Manu felt it. The dragon recognized the demon with the bad acting. Vulcan was outraged by the word demon. Judging by the fact that the guy doesn't feel his strength, he has a pretty low level. Vulcan called him a snotty dragon. The guy went berserk. He screams, asking how Vulcan dares to call him a dragon. It seems he wants to die. Meanwhile, Chris was already at the Tower of the Magicians in the vicinity of the 10th floor. It's strange, but Vulcan still hasn't returned. Where is he? That he doesn't answer. Chris entered the tower and it seemed to him that there was no one there. Suddenly, someone greeted him. A guy named Ken is in charge of the Mage Tower. Chris said there doesn't seem to be much to do there. Ken replied that few people possess the mana of the 10th floor. Only flies fly here. Chris wanted to use the necromancer's room and asked if it was possible. Ken said sure. But in order to prove that the hero has mana, it is necessary to fill the crystal ball in his hands with it. Just fill it with mana. You can consider it as just using magic. Chris touched the ball and the whole room was filled with a purple aura. Ken is shocked that the one who reached the 10th floor had so much mana. And suddenly, the crystal ball shattered in Chris's hands and the guy fell to the ground. The hero asked where the necromancer's room was. Meanwhile, the dragon began to attack Vulcan. The situation is not the best. Chris is too far away. Mana is separated from the soul. The dragon asks how much longer Vulcan will hide among the souls. It's time for a fight. Suddenly, a guy from the crowd noticed the horn. There is no doubt that he is from the dragon race. This enraged the guy even more, and the crowd began to quickly disperse. This guy is definitely from the dragon race. But he reacts to this word too strangely, as if his body and soul are different. Vulcan doesn't know if this is even possible. And suddenly, the curiosity of a scientist begins to awaken in him. He plans to use the soul as a weapon. Vulcan will personally check what is hidden inside this dragon. And he hit him with a soul laser. The dragon laughed. Vulcan is not just a demon. This is spiritual power. Magic that uses the soul instead of mana. The dragon is not yet capable of this. This is Vulcan himself, the spiritual master. The dragon will regret having messed with him. He decided to introduce himself. Great! The guy fought back and also introduced himself. He is the Dragon Slayer Hendrik, and the one who will finish off Vulcan. Dragon Slayer. That's what they call someone who fought dragons. Damn, this guy has such a strong soul. But Vulcan doesn't understand what she's doing in the dragon's body. Hendrik used his signature dragon technique. He is too young, so Vulcan underestimated him. If this body contains the soul of someone who has risen to the 800th floor, then even Chris won't help here. Did Vulcan really think that Hendrik would keep getting hit? The hero tried to bind the dragon with a soul bond, but it cut everything with a full moon. However, a huge hand, caused by the soul connection, loomed over Hendrik. Phew! Vulcan was on the verge of collapse. He used all the energy and mana he temporarily received from Chris. He thinks Hendrik won't do anything for a while. This is Vulcan's chance. We must act. The dragon with difficulty repelled all attacks. Vulcan said his name. Excellent, Hendrik remembered. Next time he will personally cut it, he gives his word. There are so many rooms in the tower. Ken replied that the path of magic can be different. He wonders who our hero is. Chris only got to the 10th floor. Ken thinks he can't compare to him because he himself got to the 35th floor. The hero also noted that Ken seemed to be a good magician. He was not bad as a guide. The guy brought Chris to the necromancer's room. Chemicals, corpses, and even books. It's a necromancer's dream. If you need anything, Ken says to call and leaves. Then the hero suggested to start. Miho ran but stopped in front of someone. It was Vulcan who appeared. Chris asked what he had been doing all this time. The spiritual master said not to think about it, I just overdid it with the morning training. Looks like Chris is about to start. Yes, to use spiritual power like Vulcan. The hero told the warrior spirits to prepare everything. They brought books, drew a pentagram, lit candles. Vulcan took Miho in his arms and suggested that they move away. This could be Chris's last order, so he said to listen carefully. Vulcan must guard his body until he wakes up. The spirit master says to be careful. If he dies, Vulcan will take Chris's body for himself. So, a spirit was summoned, which quickly began to break into the hero's body. Miho got scared and screamed. Vulcan began to calm the cub, saying that everything was going as it should. Spiritual power. This is the basic principle of necromancers, allowing them to use souls as mana. The fastest way to awaken spiritual powers within yourself is to accept the state of your soul. In other words, die. It seems Chris has entered the spirit world. The souls are screaming to give up his body. So it has begun. They chase after the bound flesh in the hope of coming to life again. The souls fight among themselves for Chris, and old man Vulcan is told to just continue to learn the truth. Now the hero's body is vulnerable, so Vulcan tells the warrior spirits to protect the master from ghosts. The kobolds grabbed them by the tails, and Vulcan began to fire a spiritual laser at them. Ken entered the room because of the strange sounds and was shocked. There was a real mess going on here. Vulcan realized that he was the manager and demanded help. Miho was hiding around the corner when she suddenly noticed one ghost that managed to hide behind Chris's back. He would have grabbed him at any moment, because there was no protection here. Vulcan and Ken weren't scared. There was no one behind Chris. Let him pull himself together. Otherwise, they will take his body away. Miho ran up to them and her aura consumed the entire room. The ghosts are confused as to where the fox came from. And suddenly they froze in place, shouting how cute Miho was, especially her tail. The ghosts softened and fell to the ground, admiring the beautiful little animal. The warrior spirits of Vulcan were no exception, but he was shocked that Ken also fell for it. Vulcan tells him to come to his senses. It's an enchantment. Miho doesn't just control ghosts. His power enslaves even souls. After all, divine blood means a lot. And then Niamd appeared, outraged by the noise and the fact that everything here was upside down. Vulcan remembers that before his death he was quite strong. If Niamd wanted to inhabit Chris's body, it would be too dangerous. Vulcan wanted to stop him, but fell. It seems the charm has not yet worn off. He cannot move. Vulcan shouts to Miho that they need to stop Niamd. The spirit tells the furball to move aside. He has no interest in Miho. The little animal jumped towards Niamd, trying to use all its charm. But it seemed that Miho had run out of strength, and that was his limit. Niamd was seriously angry. Some animal, nothing special, was trying to scare him. And then someone shot the ghost in the arm. Chris thanked Miho, and that was the end of Niamdu. Even evil spirits can be used instead of bullets. Niamd is furious. How dare some human being? Chris pierced the ghost's body with a 10-finger bullet. How simple and powerful, he gathered strength with his fingers and shoots. All that was left of the ghost was a hole in the wall. Well, the new power works well. The puppeteer is simply shocked. He asks what had to be done in the class change tower to reach such a level. It's too long to explain. Chris asked why the manager came here. The puppeteer wanted to convey something. Among all the items the hero asked for, these are the ones the manager did not find in the magic cloak. Deadly poisons for enhancement, fire crystal with fire energy, and ice crystal with ice energy. The puppeteer found it faster than Vulcan thought. Chris asked about the puppet that brought the suitcase with the items. They used them to clear the 100th floor and above. The puppeteer nodded, saying that everything was correct. Delivering these items is your final task as the 10th floor manager. The puppeteer wants to return and climb the tower as a participant. Okay, of course, but Chris asked why. The manager needs to get stronger. As a trader, he set himself the goal of reaching the top. And if you listen to the Golden Lich, thanks to Chris, colossal changes will occur in the tower. And in such conditions, the puppeteer, having overcome 100 floors, will become the best merchant, with whom no one can compare. Chris smiled in a good mood. This guy looks so much like the Golden Lich of his time. If the puppeteer's abilities are sufficient, Chris will tell him about his and the Lich's plans. The guy would definitely like to listen and thanked him. The puppeteer's carriage has left the class change tower area. Then Chris will try to fill his empty stomach. Vulcan asks if he is really going to eat all of it. Naturally, how could it be otherwise? The hero's appetite allows him to absorb the power of objects and make it his own. Isn't Vulcan curious about what kind of power Chris will have after these crystals? Ken suddenly came to his senses and shouted that it was dangerous here. But he saw only Vulcan nearby. He asked where the participant and that fox were. The spiritual master said not to worry, they are safe and sound. Well, or not whole. Ken didn't understand what he meant. Suddenly screams were heard. Chris's mouth was burning because he had eaten the crystal. The gumiho is worried about her cub. She asks not to show her baby this horror. Chris's spiritual power mixed with fire. He gained resistance to hallucinations. Now all that was left was poison resistance. Later, they left the tower and his stomach ached. Vulcan asks why Chris gave himself this torture. He even drank that poison, he's so persistent. But he needs all of this. Chris said that since the Star Nine have different ways of fighting, he should prepare himself and get different resistances, especially to poisons, because among them there is one that is related to poisons. If only the hero had guessed about his tricks earlier, he would not have allowed himself to be reduced to such a pitiful state. The warrior spirit led all the orcs in the area. Miho waited a long time. It was time for a snack. Vulcan thought he should be given a liver after all. He was still just a cub. But suddenly, Miho bared his fangs and bit into the corpses of the monsters. So there is no need for additional help. The cub consumed 127 pieces of raw liver out of 999. Chris would like to make waves here, but this is a big city. It's best not to do anything that might attract people's attention. By the way, the hero asked who Vulcan fought last night, so he knew everything. Vulcan's mana was so fluctuating. How could he not notice? Chris asked if he had met one of the 4 great beings. Vulcan replied that he had guessed correctly. It was one dragon, a rather strong fellow. Fortunately, it was possible to suppress it with spiritual power. Chris is furious. One of the 4 great beings was here. The volcano demands that you calm down. You shouldn't turn into a demon right on the road. Chris started bleeding. The spiritual master told him to calm down again. It wasn't just a dragon. So, Vulcan told everything he saw and heard. Chris learned about the dragon slayer Hendrik. Even though he said so then, it's unthinkable. So that the flesh and soul are separate. True, Vulcan also refused to believe it at first, but he saw it with his own eyes. It's clear that if it was the dragon slayer Hendrik, then Chris knows him. At the very beginning of his ascent, he killed a young dragon. And then he killed everyone who was pursuing him one by one, and eventually turned into a dragon slayer. Chris has heard he died somewhere on the 700-800 the floor. Vulcan says that given our hero's situation, it might have been a trap. Okay, I should meet this Hendrik once. Vulcan asks not to rush. Chris's predator feature, although a deception, has a punishment. He must absorb poison, hot and cold crystals. Better to cure the resistance they cause as soon as possible. The hero thought Vulcan had gone crazy. Does he really want to be purified by divine power along with all the warrior spirits? But what should he do then? Chris won't continue to cough up blood under a mask. The best way is to gain divine power. Vulcan said that this was nonsense and Miho started to growl. And then she howled so loudly that the whole street was so loud that her ears hurt. And then Vulcan told Chris to look around. There's something wrong with these people. What's wrong with them? They don't react to Miho's roar. It's not clear what's going on, but they just mindlessly walk forward. Suddenly the people dispersed and a girl approached Chris. She said she was pleased to meet the ghost mask. It's an Elijah. The hero drew his sword, saying that he had other thoughts, but she advised him not to do something he would regret. This alien is so fast that she managed to intercept the attack. She repeated once again that she was glad to meet him. Damn, he's so strong, Chris can't move. The girl touched his face, saying that his mouth was damaged. She ran her hand down. The esophagus, stomach, and entrails were also badly damaged. The hero does not understand what she is doing. Suddenly, the girl began to heal Chris with her energy. He stepped back. Miho and Vulcan panicked. But the hero's damaged body was completely restored. This is clearly divine power. The girl thinks this is enough for Chris to understand that she has no hostile intentions. She is Uriel, an Elijah from the Muke tribe. People finally came to their senses and did not understand what they had just done or how long it had been. The heroes came to the Golden Lich Hotel. The maids didn't understand why they were standing there, as if they were deep in thought. They thought maybe they were working too much. Chris watched them from the crack, and then he closed the door and returned to Uriel. He asked what kind of trick she had used. She had worked a little with her memory. This is to protect the residents. We can't let rumors spread about her and the Alios gather on the 10th floor. Uriel acts decisively, but not recklessly, not bad. Chris asked if she had used it on him or if he had already forgotten everything. The girl said not to worry. Her charms do not work on people like him, with a strong consciousness. Uriel looked at Miho and asked what kind of cute creature this was, and also about her ghost friend Chris, who never stops watching her, so she sees them. In any case, the hero asked, Uriel came here for him. A man trying to hide his ugliness behind a mask is plotting a coup. However, he and his assistants are very weak. Help them to complete the task successfully. Ariel came because of a prophecy her tribe received. Something like a prophecy from a deity. A man trying to hide his ugliness behind a mask. Most likely we are talking about Chris. The hero asked about this Muke tribe, hearing such a name for the first time. Uriel took off her cape and showed her broken wings. Now the Elios have started to go mad. They are blinded by greed, so they have crossed all boundaries. And yet, they blame everyone who goes against their will and expel them from their tribe. When Elios commit a crime and are exiled, their wings, the symbol of their race, are cut off, thus showing that they are no longer Elios. Muke is a collection of Elios like Uriel, exiled from the Elios city of Utopia. According to the prophecy, Chris is going to go against the four great beings. The residents of Merca will help him with this. Chris asks via spirit connection what they will do. Vulcan says to just agree. It doesn't sound like a lie. The hero asked what kind of help they could offer him. He was very surprised by the answer. None. The Muke's power is enormous in itself, however. Utopia keeps a close eye on them and interferes in all their affairs. If they want to help, this hostility will pass on to Chris. Well, why would he do that? It would be a shame to give up the Elios army, and getting help from them is too risky a decision. Although he asked if he agreed to this, Muke would help him when he found himself in a dangerous situation. Uriel replied that she would be happy to. Great, Chris makes an alliance. The girl bowed and thanked the ghostly mask. That's it, the hero didn't say his name. Chris asked if Uriel could close the eyes of the god and the demon. Maybe just for a little while. She tore a feather from her wings and closed the space in the room. It was similar to the technique the Golden Lich used. Chris asked if they were sure they couldn't hear anything. Yes. Uriel said that he can even swear at them. There won't be any problems. Then Chris will try. He took off his mask and asked that lustful creature Baal if he could hear. Uriel is shocked, but it seems that the evil lord really doesn't hear. Aleka asked why the hero needed such space. Chris replied that since they were now in the same boat, the mask and nickname could be removed. His name is Chris Morris. 10 years ago, he was called the Death Star. Hearing this, Uriel fell to her knees. She began to apologize for her rudeness. It seems like she knows him. Knows Chris, who died 10 years ago. Uriel said that she was also there where he died 10 years ago. Chris told her to think carefully before speaking. Uriel asked him if he knew what would happen when he walked up the entire 999-story tower. Chris will become like one of the perverts, something between a god and a demon that watches over the tower. The great beings are blinded by their superiority and do not want to share this place with anyone. And they try to destroy everyone except themselves who is capable of taking possession of the tower. That is, to cut it down at the root. So Chris knew this. It was just a guess, but now he was convinced. And that there is a conspirator standing in front of him. Chris screams that he will send Uriel back to where her wings are. Dark hands grabbed the girl's neck. But she also added that for this reason she became one of the Muke tribe. 10 years ago, when Uriel became one of the Muke, she went against such methods of cutting off the roots. What one man suggested, and his name was Chris Mori, the Death Star. The hero was taken aback. He let Uriel go and asked for forgiveness for his unworthy behavior. Never mind, she will have to solve this problem on her own. Chris asked to stop. He didn't want to take his anger out on her too. He already understood that Muke was different from the sky race. Uriel thanked him for his understanding. Perhaps there are other great beings like Chris. If the hero wants to see them, she will make sure they accept him. It is true that there are creatures with different characters everywhere. It is clear that there are other exiles. If they can be lured to your side, they could be useful in the war against the great creatures. Chris asks how he can meet Uriel again. She says Muke's hideout is on the 190th floor of Dream City. It's lower than he thought. Uriel replied that the higher, the greater the influence of the great beings. Moreover, the 200th and 300th floors are his territory, so there's nothing to be done. Chris had forgotten that this was his domain, Emperor Tessa's. The 200th and 300th floors were under his command. If the Muke tribe settles on its floors, there is a high probability that they will be attacked not by the Lord creatures, but by Tess. If Chris doesn't mind, Uriel will get dressed. He asked if there would be any traces left if he gave something. No, but the heavenly race is watching her, so Uriel came without anything. Chris smiled and said that was enough. The girl blushed, saying that's what he's like. The hero didn't mean that. Chris started to explain that he was talking about wings. He would like to take a feather for himself. Yes, Uriel agreed without any problems. They will grow back. And Chris asked so awkwardly, because he thought that they would not grow anymore. The girl gave him a whole handful of feathers and said that no one should know about this. The celestial race is able to find the owner of the feather. Chris says not to worry, he'll eat it all. Uriel knew he was like that, but she got it wrong again. Well, she believes him. She has to go, so see you later in Dream City. Chris said he wouldn't disappoint and Uriel would be waiting. The hero immediately decided to eat the feathers. He couldn't put it off. The divine power of the heavenly race. I wonder if he can withstand it. And if he can, what kind of power can he gain? Vulcan tells Chris to do as he wants. He gave in after the third poison. The spiritual master lifted Miho up and said that he was not allowed to pick up and eat everything in sight, like the master. Chris ate the feather and immediately began to choke. He found himself in the middle of a sea of water in an endless space. It seemed he had lost consciousness and woke up in an imaginary world. Could Chris's body not accept the divine power? Then he must win the battle. And suddenly, a huge golden waterfall poured down on him. This divine power that entered the hero. She's like a huge rock, a single feather, but such power. It's a good thing Chris didn't fight Uriel. He doesn't even want to think about what would have happened if she had swallowed the body whole. And then Chris noticed that the water was rising, so it was a real waterfall. It is necessary to defeat her before this stream of divine power completely absorbs the hero. What to do and how to be. There is only one way out of this situation. Vulcan looks at Chris's body. He used spiritual power, but something is wrong. He uses his soul as a component. Miho is upset, but Vulcan suggests trusting the master. If Chris started something, it means he has a plan. Let no student think that he is the only one who cannot wait to see his potential manifest. Vulcan is interested in what Chris will surprise him with this time. The hero began to drink golden water from the straw, but it was not the same. He tries to use spiritual power to suppress divine powers. This power is obtained through saturation. Chris thought the eating image would work, but it wouldn't work. One must allow the divine power to suppress it, or one will have to let it go. No, why is Chris showing off? These images are created by his own soul. It is necessary to act in a different way. A huge monster's mouth appeared in place of the waterfall. Now everything will be for real. That's right, that's it. Chris, thanks to his new form, greedily absorbed the divine power. It was so delicious that he kept craving more of it. A smile appeared on Chris's face, just like Bal's. This looks like what the evil lord wanted. He claps his hands. Baal joyfully exclaims that this is the birth of a predatory demon king. William once told about a greedy dragon. Just like Chris's Baal, he also has a god who is always up to something. He is very greedy. That's why he eats everything. But even that's not enough for him. He wants to eat everything that is in this world. Just a crazy dragon. They call him Greedy Dragon. And his nickname is Insatiability. And Chris conjured up exactly that in his imagination. It seemed that the hero had come to his senses. Miho exclaimed joyfully. Vulcan is eager to know whether the hero succeeded or not. If not, he will tease him. What a pity, but of course it worked. It's just one seed. But it created organs in Chris to produce divine energy. The hero asked if Vulcan was pleased. Our hero is only a man, but he has divine powers. If anyone from the divine race found out about this, they would immediately want to kill Chris. He had hurt their pride. The hero doesn't think they'll get by with just one kill. He won't be surprised if the entire race rushes here. A surprising result, but also dangerous. Chris is not yet strong enough to withstand the fire of 4 sacred creatures. If his condition remains as unstable, and he will have to fight with 4 creatures. A few days later, in the hunting field on the 10th floor, the warrior spirits fought with the local orcs. Chris, who was watching from above, said that it had started. The hero asked Vulcan how the newcomer was doing. Not bad, as he expected. Healer of the undead and ghost warriors. A weak summoner negates the entire existing combat mechanism of the necromancer. However, judging by the divine power, he is trying to reach the highest state. There is nothing to be done, you just have to be careful. It looks like Miho ate everything and is very happy. Tomorrow it will all be over. Miho still has about 100 pieces of liver left to eat. Chris didn't think he'd become an orc killer twice. He opened his status window. In a few days, the divine power seed grew and gained 2 points. 3 points won't help Chris much, but he can use them in a critical situation. Vulcan asked what the hero would do now. Hendrik had to meet. Vulcan showed the exact spot where the dragon had been all this time. He did nothing, as if he was waiting for someone. Hendrik is a dragon slayer who uses a dragon shell. Chris wanted to meet him. If he's stuck on the 10th floor, there's a reason for it. Perhaps, like Uriel, he is waiting for something after hearing the voice of a god and a demon. Vulcan said that they came and Hendrik was standing right behind this alley. It looks like he really is of the dragon race. Chris wanted to go, but Vulcan started to stop him. Was the hero really going to just talk to him? What if Hendrik isn't waiting for him? It turns out that the hero just pestered a stranger. Chris replied that then everything could be resolved with fists. Vulcan says that he has gone crazy and let him go without him. Looks like Vulcan shit his pants after what happened last time. He began to justify himself, saying that the first spiritual master would never do such a thing. Hendrik listened to the argument. He was told that on the 10th floor there would be someone who would fulfill his wish, and he just had to wait for him. Chris walked up to the dragon and asked if he was Hendrik. Yes, the guy was waiting for the hero to talk to him. There is also a familiar face. Hendrik obligingly said that Chris was accepted. The hero doesn't really like the dragon's straightforwardness, but since he's accepted, he'll keep quiet. There were too many prying eyes here, so Hendrik said to follow him. He said it was here, but it was just a dead end. There are many alleys around the square, but for some reason they came here. And then suddenly, a red portal appeared. Chris said that they would go after Hendrik. Looking around, the hero asked what kind of place this was. The dragon replied that it was the so-called subspace hidden on the 10th floor. The eyes of neither god nor demon reach here. That's it. Hendrik has a question. He will destroy all the dragons in this tower that killed him. And he asks if Chris is ready to go with him to this goal. The hero asked the idiot if his dream was too stupid. Hendrik was indignant and asked again what Chris was muttering. Vulcan began to shout at the hero. Hendrik is just a monster, and this made him angry. Chris, through a spiritual connection, told the loser to stand still. He had a plan. The hero doesn't know what Hendrik's circumstances are, but he can guess how he got to this state. Chris asked if he knew that it wasn't just those 4 creatures that killed them. It's none of the hero's business why Hendrik is so obsessed with dragons, but that's not enough for him. Chris will kill all the bastards who fucked him, whoever they were. The hero repeated once again that Hendrik was not fit to be on the same team with him. Did Chris really think of fighting all 4 creatures? The hero is the same as Hendrik. He died but came back to life. They are behind the dragon's death. That should be enough of an answer. And then the dragon laughed out loud. He said Chris was right and reluctantly apologized. The seer that Uriel spoke of is our hero. It looks like she's already found Mook. Great, Hendrik likes Chris. Suddenly he pulled out a sword. He needs to personally check whether he is really determined. The dragon asked the man who was going against him what his name was. The hero took off his mask and said that he was the Death Star Chris Morris. Suddenly, some old man started yelling at the damn lizard. They seemed to have come to an agreement, but he's causing a fuss here again. Well, Hendrik was sad that he was here too. Chris asked who he was. The dragon replied that it was the blacksmith who had come here first. It was he who had made Hendrik's sword. True, the old man said that the guy could have left with the sword and asked why he had come back again. It can't be. It's a goblin. An unusual combination. The blacksmith asked what kind of blackie this was. Chris is shocked that this goblin is still alive. It seems he has no respect for old people. Yes, the blacksmith was not dead yet and asked if the hero was not satisfied with anything. No, that's not what Chris meant. He asked how the man had survived the crash. The blacksmith, in a rage, swung his hammer at the hero, saying that he was the same bandit who started the fire in the village. And then Hendrik stopped him. The old man demands to let him go, shouting that this bastard burned down the village. The dragon says to calm down. Chris also has his own story, as does Hendrik. Vulcan asked if the old man knew a goblin named Leah. The blacksmith screamed in shock. How do they know her? So they went to the old man's forge. There, Chris told them that Leah was alive. Hendrik is shocked. What a coincidence. The blacksmith said that there was a festival in the village that day. All the goblins of the tower gathered on the 100th floor. The old man didn't feel very well. After all, he was already old, so he stayed here. And then the tragedy happened. The man asks where Leah is now and if she is safe. Chris replied that she was currently on the 9th floor and would come to them soon. This means that this mask the hero is holding belongs to her. Chris said that Leah gave it to him for saving him. Hendrik asked if this girl was strong. The hero replied that she was not yet fully formed, but in a one-on-one fight, she was stronger than them. So the dragon asked if she was a temporary ally or one who would go with them to the end. Chris confidently replied that he would go to the end. When Leah gave him the mask, they agreed that they would take revenge together. The old man took the hero's hand and thanked him. His name is Jeno. He was a blacksmith in the goblin village. He will use his skills to help Chris in any way he can. Jeno asks him to help rebuild the village with Leah. Chris shyly replied, "Of course." Vulcan is surprised that the boy doesn't know that the mask carries the meaning of marriage. The blacksmith says that the hero can take all the equipment he has. It is a good weapon. It's very different from what the Golden Lich gave. Jeno was the best goblin blacksmith, so it's different. Okay, it's time for Chris and Hendrik to go. They wanted to say goodbye to the old man, but he had already fallen asleep. He probably got over it when he heard there were survivors. As far as Hendrik knows, he couldn't sleep well after the tragedy with the village. Okay, then they won't bother him. We'll have to bring Leah here first when Chris meets her. It would do her good to meet Jeno too, what a relief. Suddenly, Vulcan shouted at Chris to be careful. There was a huge explosion right behind him. Hendrik said that the hero has a good reaction speed. He did warn that he would check, to check if he has the skills to kill Chris. The hero told Hendrik not to deceive himself. He would also test the Dragon Slayer. Chris's warrior spirits and dragon sword skills will battle. A rain of daggers began to fall on Hendrik, but it was weak. The dragon doesn't understand what's going on. Chris dodged the sword technique so easily. He immediately realized that it was a multi-class issue, grabbed the hero by the hand and threw him away. Mage and Necromancer. Chris moves pretty well considering his class, but Hendrik said there was one problem. For this to have the desired effect, the hero will have to awaken the monster of the 10th floor. However, he did not even suspect that they had already managed to tie him up with chains from behind. Then Vulcan asked what about the first spiritual master? Chris activated Gungnir. The hero cut the throat of the Great Orc warrior in 1 second. This is his strongest magic technique. And now he sent Gungnir at Hendrik. However, Vulcan was worried about the pattern of his sword. With the help of magic dispersal, the dragon easily broke all the chains. And the dragon's destruction cut Gungnir. Vulcan shouted at Chris to be careful, but he still ended up in the epicenter of the explosion. And then Hendrik hit him too. The dragon asked if that was Chris's strongest move. And now Hendrik has nothing more to say to him. Our hero is finished. And then Chris came out of the building opposite with his bow. He still had the strongest word left. Well, Hendrik says that compared to his sword technique, the hero's shooting abilities are simply terrible. However, because the arrows were imbued with magic, they still pierced the dragon's body. There is one final blow left. We need to finish it off. When Chris was with Leah, there was always a side effect, but this time it will work out. While the hero was putting on the mask, he missed the moment, and Hendrik launched a fire tornado. It won't be easy. The dragon laughed, saying that Chris was strong. Hendrik lost the battle in numbers. But this is not the end. He is thirsty for more. Hendrik charged his sword with the energy of the flaming dragon, demanding that he attack it. Chris has no way to escape. Even if he can predict the dragon's movements, his speed is not enough. If Hendrik hits, the hero is finished. In that case, Chris is hoping for a fox mask. Geno was awakened by a loud roar. He realized that crazy lizard Hendrik was on the rampage again. Suddenly, Miho abruptly rushed out of the forge. The old man tried to catch up with him because it was dangerous. Hendrik disappeared for a moment, then struck with his dragon sword of murder. He was ready to finish Chris off, but he dodged. The dragon doesn't believe it, because with such technology he couldn't do it. And then Chris was back on the side of the building, right behind Hendrik. The Dragon Slayer realized it was all about the mask. So the hero wants to play in the forest. He bared his long claws and jumped on Hendrik. The Dragon Slayer began to fight back, saying that Chris's movements and strength were nothing compared to what he had before. And it's all thanks to the fox mask. However, Hendrik is not laughing now. Chris caught the right moment. But the bastard, the guy gave in on purpose to use magic. And then there was another explosion around Chris. The final ability, enchantment, comes into play. However, Hendrik smashed the pink field, shouting that he was not interested in men. He needs to concentrate a little. Such spells are quickly destroyed. But Hendrik will still have to freeze for a while. Chris threw out his claw blades. He got close enough that instead of using some stupid weapon, he would finish him off with one blow. Chris will borrow Wade Lee's technique. Multi-class, combat, fox technique, enchantment, strengthening. Spiritual power, demonic power, divine power. The hero uses everything he has. Chris focused all his strength on his fist and hit Hendrik with a Wade-style through punch. The aura of the battle and the explosion was so powerful that Vulcan lost consciousness. He was worried about how the battle ended. And then he saw Chris, battered but alive, standing firmly on his feet. The hero has spent all his strength and can't even move. I should have finished Hendrik off with that blow. The Dragon Slayer, clutching his stomach, said that Chris was accepted. But Hendrik didn't. He failed the exam. If Chris had used the last blow, the idiot might have fallen. Well, the dragon didn't think he would fail the test. How he annoys Chris. Great, then Hendrik will make a decision when he sees the hero's final move. He liked Chris. The Dragon Slayer will do anything to get through. Our hero is in shock. He screams that he can't even move right now. And when the fire dragon loomed over Chris, he decided that to hell with Hendrik, he passed. Vulcan teases the hero that he also lost, but he said that he would also give the Dragon Slayer a test. Chris demands to shut up. Vulcan is just a ghost, but it hurts for him to even move. What a look the hero has! He shouldn't overexert himself. Vulcan says that Chris was lucky to meet Uriel and receive divine powers. Without them, he would have died long ago with such poor health. Chris demands that the old man stop reproaching him. They'll see when he regains his strength. Vulcan doesn't stop laughing. The loser's screams are hard to hear. Suddenly, Hendrik entered the room to ask how Chris was feeling. Vulcan remembered the dragon's words that next time he would personally cut him down. The spiritual master asked for forgiveness for what happened. Hendrik replied that he wasn't even thinking about it. They were in the same boat now. Better to forget old grievances. That's good. During the battle, Hendrik seemed to Vulcan to be as crazy as Chris. But in everyday life, he is different. Vulcan apologizes, of course, but Chris's appearance speaks for itself. Hendrik said he overdid it. Chris, furious, tells them both to attack him. He will definitely win the next fight. Hendrik thought that this would certainly happen someday. Today, Chris called him because he wanted to hear a story about the Dragon Slayer's past life, and also about his death. Hendrik's family and homeland disappeared without a trace because of the dragons. Somehow, miraculously, he survived. And all that was left for him, looking at his dead brothers, was hatred for Horns and Scales. And then Hendrik started climbing the tower like the other participants. Luckily, he had abilities. This reminds me of someone Chris knew. And on the 600th floor, the guy killed the dragon for the first time and began his revenge. Surprisingly, Hendrik got to the 600th floor quite quickly. This means that he has been hunting 4 creatures since then. Yes, but they began to hunt him too. That was his daily routine. The stronger Hendrik became, the weaker their punishments were. It can be considered that after the 800th floor, they no longer had their own lair. Punishment is a system that prevents the tower from being monopolized by participants who have reached high floors. All participants received restrictions on their abilities when their floor was lowered. It was because of this that Chris was able to take the Lich's Gold's blow. Without the punishment, he would have died. The hero, in shock, asked what floor Hendrik had reached. And then the guy answered, up to 900. On the 900th floor, his journey came to an end. Yes, Hendrik crossed all boundaries. More and more races appeared that tried to catch and destroy him. In the end, he couldn't cope with them, and now he ended up here. What an irony! Among many races and classes, for some reason, it was the man in the dragon mask who saved him. It was not easy for Hendrik. He wanted to die, but even that was not easy. so he decided to accept everything as it is. The guy uses his body to take revenge. Yes, that sounds like him. Great, Hendrik asked when they would start. Then he remembered that Chris seemed to be waiting for Leah. Did he really want to climb the tower with them? Hendrik asked where he would send such a weak Chris. How annoying. They have a lot in common with the hero. Hendrik was alone in the last minutes of his life. Chris will probably be there too. Guys need to learn from their mistakes. Trying to overcome something unpleasant alone is overconfidence. Chris agrees they need helpers, allies, and brothers-in-arms with whom they can fight back to back. That's why Hendrik has a proposal to create a guild. Let's move to the 600th floor, the home of the Songguk Guild. Carmen burst in screaming and asking what was going on. Kane said that from the White Swallow Guild branch that was on the 10th floor. They sent me some interesting news. Some psycho started a fire and burned everything down to the body, and another one. Carmen was surprised that one person had done it. Yes, according to Beck Hollio's information, this doesn't look like a guild or an organization. Carmen says it's impossible. Even the strongest face a considerable punishment on such a low floor. Even for her, or for the Star 9, after the 10th floor is punished, it will be impossible to conquer the guild house. That's why Kane says that the criminal already has incredible strength on the 10th floor, just like he and Carmen did when they first climbed the tower. Although, this is just an assumption for now. Carmen asked, what if such a person really exists? What will Kane do? Naturally, he uses the same method as 10 years ago. You have to cut off the sprout. Kane will hire a capable man as a hunter, and another problem is solved. Let's get back to the heroes. Regarding the guild, Chris agrees with Hendrik. But there's a catch. The hero is currently on Baal's quest. He needs to become famous throughout the tower before he reaches the 100th floor. Chris would not want his reputation buried under Hendrik's name or the guild's name. That's it, Hendrik thought for a moment, and then said that the answer was quite simple. Chris will be the guild leader. From the very beginning, the Dragon Slayer did not seek to take this place, although it would be more correct to say that he was not confident in his abilities. And such an outstanding necromancer as Chris is a talented person who is capable of leading an army. The hero is furious about this, but he is even weaker than Hendrik. If he becomes the leader, he will probably have to give him orders. Chris asked if Hendrik could obey someone weaker and if that would suit him. And then the Dragon Slayer dropped to one knee, asking if Chris would be satisfied with that answer. The hero has no idea what kind of insult Hendrik had to endure, how angry he was and how powerless. For the sake of the goal, he is ready even to do this. Great, Chris smiled. For their revenge, he will become the guild leader. Hendrik says the hero made the right choice. Vulcan asked what the guild would be called. Chris remembered what people had said about a strange masked man plotting a coup. And then he said, confrontation. What could be more appropriate? You can register a guild immediately if you make a contribution to a trading company. Then you can talk to the puppeteer and do it for free. Chris came to Halcyon. That's right. The hero forgot that the puppeteer left, and now this guy is the boss of the 10th floor. Only Chris asked why Ken was there too. The guy replied that the tower was being repaired, so they managed to become friends with Halcyon, because Ken often came. So the guy asked why the Phantom Mask had come. The hero replied that he wanted to form a new guild. Halcyon has blossomed. If the Phantom Mask opens its guild, everyone will want to join. However, to found a guild, at least 2 people are needed. Chris pointed to Hendrik, Vulcan and Miho, asking if they were enough. Ken yelled that it was a dragon, and so close. Halcyon asked delightedly if the hero had lured him to his side. Chris said that the guild leader had become a real celeb. Hendrik didn't think that was praise. The hero added that these were not all the participants. There were also those to whom he had sent an invitation. Hopefully, when they gather here, someone will definitely be dissatisfied. Halcyon understood, because Mr. Golden Lich asked to answer all the questions of the Phantom Mask. Invitations were received by Jeno, Puppeteer, Leah and William himself. The latter thinks it will be interesting. Chris continued to practice finger shots. Today, Miho must complete the second quest. The baby as always ate well. Finally, the liver scale filled up and a strong pink light appeared. Hendrik asked what would happen when the quest was completed, but Chris himself didn't know for sure. The nine-tailed fox says he is searching for his true form. And then Vulcan pointed to the side. It was Miho's true form, a little girl. She fell sharply into his arms. The Gumiho says that her child is very cute. Suddenly, Miho looked at Chris and called him Dad. Before the boys had time to react, Leah asked her brother if he really had a daughter. Where did she come from? Miho pointed at Leah and asked who she was, calling Chris Dad again. The hero, in a panic, asks the Kumiho what is happening. The quest is complete. Now Miho has become his pet. So this is the reward. Kumiho asked to tell everyone that this was his daughter. Chris wanted to somehow figure out the situation. But Vulcan and Hendrik began to mock, surprised that people were now even giving birth to foxes. Leah fell to the ground suddenly. If Chris had such a big daughter, then how old was he when he gave birth to her? That is, the brother is strong and handsome. He won't be surprised if he has a girlfriend. Leah just needs to accept it. Who is she? It just happened. She's fine. Hendrik realized that it was the goblin girl named Leah. He came up and said it was nice to meet you. He also introduced himself, saying that he would be helping Chris. Hendrik hopes for cooperation. However, looking at him, Leah recognized the same hated image in the fire. She screamed that he was an enemy of the village and wanted to kill him. Hendrik began to defend himself. He asks Chris to explain. It seems that this girl has misunderstood something. She saw him and got angry. Chris told him to sort it out himself. Hendrik was worried that Leah might get seriously hurt, but she could handle it. In that case, let's consider this an entrance exam. Hendrik pushed Leah back, but she quickly came closer again. She has some good power, but it's not enough to defeat him. Leah was back on the ground. There was such a big difference in their strength. There is an enemy standing right in front of her, but she does not have the strength to take revenge on him. That same spirit laughed, saying that this was the dragon. This time, he will give the young goblin girl powers, so that she could kill this dragon and show Hendrik why the spirit is called a dragon slayer. The guy saw the ego sword funny. Hendrik blocked the power of the dragon slayer sword with one hand, and then he hit Leah in the stomach, and she fell to the ground. Hendrik says not to think that this sword is ordinary. It is much more powerful in quality than her sword. Dragon slayer sword. Leah asks the spirit to give her the strength to take revenge. The dragon slayer was delighted. This is how it should be done. Hendrik saw the swordswoman in front of him. This is revenge for the burned village. Leah will make them pay for the dead goblins. She hit him so hard that Hendrik flew back. This power is beyond her level. The sword gave her power. The owner of the sword may be in danger. Hendrik demands that Leah release the sword from her hands. This force is like a parasite, which, once it attaches itself to her, she cannot cope with it. Memories of the burning village flashed before Leah's eyes again. She screams that she will let him out if Hendrik dies. He burned her village down to there is no forgiveness for him. That's it. Leah hates dragons too. Hates them so much that she just can't stand them. Okay, then there's only one thing left for Hendrik to do. Prevent her from becoming a cup. Leah will be in a lot of pain, but she won't die. The explosion from Hendrik's blow was so powerful that she momentarily lost consciousness. Leah walked through the forest near the goblin village. Then a ball rolled to her feet. The children ran up and asked their sister Leah to take the ball. They were local kids. She knew them well. The girl passed the ball, and everything seemed to be fine. But then the girl asked why only Leah survived. The burning skeleton grabbed her, begging her to save them. They also want to live, just like her. Dozens of burnt-out forces fell upon Leah, asking why only she was alive. The girl began to cry and ask why she was the only one who survived. The spirit replied that it was because she had to stay alive. A man capable of holding a dragon slayer sword in his hands was bound to survive. Even if all the goblins die, the only one who can avenge them is Leah. The spirit said to get up. Goblins are a tribe that does not forget gratitude and revenge. Leah grabbed the sword and attacked Hendrik. She was about to pierce his body, but the sword broke right on him. The spirit said that this was probably her limit. Leah must become even stronger. Strong enough to use it, and so on until he avenges all the goblins. Leah fell on Hendrik, exhausted. Vulcan and Chris ran towards the boys, afraid that someone had died. Hendrik is fine. It seems that Leah lost all her strength before she hit him with the sword. He thinks this child needs to be allowed to sleep. Leah was carried to a safe place on the bed. She seems to be exhausted. She has exceeded her limits. Using the sword was probably too much. As soon as she opens her eyes, she will probably rush to Hendrik again. Perhaps she has a similar story. Chris thinks that dragons were among those who attacked the village. Then, Hendrik said that she would have to overcome her dislike, because the weapon's misbehavior was the owner's fault. Chris asked him to come with him. The hero rented the entire floor. Hendrik can use it until Leah wakes up. The dragon is grateful, but says that Chris has no need to care about his feelings. Chris went berserk, shouting that he wasn't worried about him. Leah would be safer if Hendrik wasn't around when she came to. The girl slowly began to open her eyes, hoping to see her brother, but in front of her was a joyful Miho. The fox screamed as her horned sister opened her eyes. Chris came in immediately, asking if she was awake. Yes, although Leah still doesn't quite understand what's going on. She tried to say something when she fell unconscious again. Chris took Miho away, saying that if he didn't stop calling Leah sister, he risked dying. The fox was surprised and asked who would kill her. The hero just quietly pointed to Leah, this sister. Some time passed. Chris asked if Leah had packed everything. They would not be returning to the 10th floor anymore. Yes, the Dragon Slayer sword may be broken, but it seems to always remain a part of her. All of Hendrik's things are made with magic. He has nothing to leave here. Miho has no things either. Chris was surprised that he was no longer her dad, but Oppa. Leah exclaimed that it was she who taught her. Miho, although a spirit, is still small. Naturally, she can't yet separate her dad from her older brother. That's why Leah explained everything to her in a very accessible language and in a kind way. Miho likes Daddy better, but she has no choice. Chris took out 3 scrolls of spatial movement and told me to take them. Once they break it, they are transported to the hall prepared by the Golden Lich. Leah is shocked. It is very expensive. Chris was about to leave, but then Vulcan became indignant with questions about where his scroll was. Oh, right, the hero almost forgot. He began to suck the spiritual master into himself. Vulcan is furious. He told Chris not to treat him like an item and not to put him in his inventory. Okay, now let's go. Arriving at the place, Leah was surprised that there was such a bright place on the 10th floor. This is all done with magic. Only a golden lich can take on such expenses. Suddenly, Jeno arrived on the scene. At first, Leah couldn't believe it, and then she greedily hugged her grandfather. They both started crying profusely. They finally met. What a relief. The Golden Lich entered the room. Latecomers arrived together. Haven't the kids been taught that it's polite to arrive 10 minutes early? William knows about the goblin situation, so he shouldn't be angry. He said that the Death Star has become too soft. The puppeteer asked if this was the same one who died 10 years ago, the one who betrayed humanity for the sake of power and strength. Apparently he knows about it. Chris took off his mask and confirmed that it was him, the one who died 10 years ago. The Golden Lich read out all the information they knew to date. The puppeteer tried to digest it all. He wanted to make sure. That is, 4 creatures had been secretly destroying heroes with abilities all this time. And among them was the Goblin Village on the 100th floor. And the Ghost Mask, that is Chris and Hendrik, are also victims who were resurrected. Chris nodded. So the goal of their guild is revenge. Confrontation. They will turn the whole world of beings upside down. Jeno knew that these guys would definitely change this tower. After packing, William asked Chris what he was going to do next. But what else was there to do? We'll climb the tower. The others will do the same. Let everyone develop their strength to the maximum. To survive a storm, you must become a hurricane yourself. Leah asked hopefully if Grandpa Jeno would go to the tower with them. He thanked for the words, however. He needs to move separately from the guys. Leah is shocked. She asked why in shock. Jeno is convinced of her safety. Now he is calm. The old man felt his anger dull, as did hers. If they were together, they would calm down and stop fighting. We can't let the goblin's last sword be dulled by some old man. From now on, Jeno will change his name to Mu Yong, the one without a shadow. He is no longer the goblin Jeno, but a blacksmith. He tells Leah to remember the wrath and responsibility of the last goblin. So Chris has a task for Grandpa Mu Yong. The hero told William that he wants to establish a base on the 100th floor. To do this, you need to conduct an investigation of the Goblin Village. The Golden Lich replied that there was no problem and asked who would be the manager. It's safe to say that there is a suitable person here. The best blacksmith among the goblins, who lived on the 100th floor for a long time and knows the terrain well. And that's true. William told the puppeteer to go with Mu Yong to the 100th floor. The boy respectfully told the old man that he would see him off. Once the goals of each member have been determined, it's time to hit the road. So, the opposition squad is ready to live up to its name. The guys arrived at the entrance to the safe zone on the 11th floor. The 11th floor is the real beginning. Anyone who did this to Chris should wait. He doesn't care what heights they have achieved. He will grind them into dust. A girl in a grey robe entered the zone after the heroes. She took off her hood and followed them. People were whispering that the Phantom Mask had reached the 50th floor. Chris ordered the servants of the Dead Kingdom to rise. The guards pounced on him from behind. Rumors also spread that the Phantom Mask's comrades had distinguished themselves. Chris's army has captured the palace on the 50th floor. The guy watched from above and didn't understand what was happening. Why now, when he was in power? But the guild leader of the Holy Kingdom will not only receive. He cast a spell and a huge golem appeared. Golems began to activate all over the kingdom. Leah screams that it's the monster from the 120th floor. That's right. As soon as the leader manages to summon all the golems, the situation will change dramatically. So he ordered his golems to tear apart these bastards who dared to touch the sacred union. However, before he could even finish speaking, his main golem was chopped down. The Phantom Mask's strongest comrade turned out to be a dragon. Chris walked up to the guy and grabbed him by the neck. They're from the Shikari branch on the 50th floor. The guy asks if the hero really wants to become the enemy of the Star Nine. How can Chris? These freaks have been his enemies for 10 years. He crushed the guy's body. But every time the Phantom Mask set a record, the guilds on those floors would turn into nothing. Was the Phantom Mask really that strong? Chris figured it out on the 50th floor too. Great, the heroes continue to turn everything upside down, namely, the plans of these idiots. People were whispering that Ghost Mask and his men were attacking the Star Nine. Chris asked how Balu's quest was. The hero sees everything up to the 100th floor, throws information around left and right. Vulcan says that up until the 40th floor, they managed to cover their tracks with magic. Chris does this on purpose. He is already tired of looking for information about them, now let them look for the guys themselves. Chris opened the status window. His features are Predator and Omnipotence. And from the features, comprehensive immunity and endurance. This is enough to cope with almost anything. And he also has a weak but magical power. It will become a weapon even against someone who has reached a high floor. It's just a pity there are no normal weapons. Hendrik advises not to be greedy. Chris has a weapon that Mu Yong made. If you don't go higher, it will be hard to get a weapon better than this. Leah wonders how Grandpa is doing. Miho said that Hendrik made her upset. The dragon rolled his eyes, but the boys had no choice. To get the weapon and cheer up Leah, you'll have to go there. Chris about the black market on the 51st floor. You can get good items there, which are difficult to obtain in the usual way. Sometimes rare specimens appear. If Leah likes something at the auction, Chris will buy it. Leah was happy, and Miho started shouting that she was happy too. How happy they were. The hero thought that he should have given it a long time ago. Shopping sounds good to everyone. They wanted to go to the market when suddenly a bomb was thrown at them. That same girl in the robe pointed a gun at Chris. The explosions happened one after another. Small, but such a powerful weapon. If it weren't for the mask's power, it would have been tough. It looks like Chris managed to dodge the shot at point-blank range. Hendrik was about to finish her off when she contacted the system. It turned out to be a machine. The girl parried the blow and pushed the dragon back. Leah and Miho were furious that she dared to raise a weapon against their brother and attacked from both sides. Suddenly, the girl launched a flying machine. And then, she launched a lot of bombs at the heroes. Leah and Miho were stunned. Super rookie Phantom Mask and his comrades. The girl expected more, and this is all they can do. Of course not. Chris and Hendrik were waiting for the right moment and attacked from behind. But the girl immediately put guns to their heads. Not bad. She was afraid the end would be boring. The girl pushed the boys away and told them not to overexert themselves too much. She had something to tell the two of them. Her name is Shane, and she is a bounty hunter. So, someone paid for our heroes. But they only reached the 50th floor. Who could have ordered them? Shane said the guys don't have to introduce themselves. One is the super newbie Ghost Mask, and the other is his friend, the Weird Dragon. And yet, they are her prey. Hendrik pointed his sword at Shane and asked if she had said everything she wanted before she died. The girl smiled, saying that the boys were prey, but she changed her mind. In return, she offered to make a bet. It would be beneficial for all of them. If our heroes win, Shane will reveal who put a price on their heads. Hendrik couldn't listen to this any longer. He would cut off her head right now. But suddenly, Chris stopped him. If the Star 9 or 4 racers are behind this, then the guys are in great danger. They needed information, so Chris offered to listen to Shane. She asked if the negotiations were over. The hero asked what bet she was proposing. Shane replied that it was fun to fight the strongest. She offered to fight. Hendrik is shocked. In the end, she just wants to fight. Yes, but she has a condition. Whoever wins the fight, all 3 must survive. The guys will be able to find out the information if Shane is alive, and there is no point in her killing them either. Suggests not to kill each other. I wonder what she's up to. It's 2 against 1, so Shane tells Phantom Mask not to use the summon. Okay, Chris promised. When he caught her, he could find out what was on her mind. So Hendrik said that they could cut everything off, of course, but leave him alive. Well, Shane suggested we get started. The helmet is on autopilot mode. The target has been identified. It has started fire. What kind of childish babble is this? But it seems Chris forgot that there is also Shane with guns. He immediately activated his spiritual shield. Shane sensed Hendrik behind her and activated Visor and ran away, so the guys almost attacked each other. Shane doesn't understand what's going on. Chris and Hendrik are either acting out of sync or both trying to figure it out on their own. Chris asked if Hendrik hadn't seen him blocking her, and the dragon screamed that he should have known he was going to attack. Chris shouts that the dragon must adapt to him. This is the order of the guild leader. Hendrik demands to think. If they trust this matter to him, they will win. Shane called out to the two arguing with each other. She understands that their own opinion is important to them, but they left her alone. Isn't that too much? Shane asked if they had ever heard of a railgun. She gave them an electric shock, but they suddenly fell somewhere deep in the forest. Phew, not without pain, but everything is fine. It's good that the teleport worked as it should. If Shane had hit Chris and Hendrik, they would have died. It was not for nothing that the hero prepared it just in case. Hendrik shouts that they escaped during the battle and asks what is going on. Chris quickly shut his mouth when suddenly a drone was heard in the sky. More specifically, a helmet. Shane uses such a crazy weapon. Who the hell is she? This girl was definitely not born on Earth. This tower is connected to different dimensions and worlds. It's entirely possible that Shane came from somewhere far away, where technology had advanced far beyond what Chris knew. He told Hendrik that if he really wanted to win, he had to listen to him. Shane caught up with the drone and started looking for the boys in the forest. And then Chris appeared in front of her. He showed up so openly. Maybe he decided to give up. Chris apologized, but Hendrik is resilient. He cast a spell to bind souls. What is it? Shane thought it was some amazing technique, and he's trying to stop her with some spell. It's even unpleasant that Chris underestimated her so much. But as soon as she started to get out of the cocoon, she saw someone's face. The girl immediately fired. What an insolent face? No, Shane realized there was something else there. And Hendrik told Chris that he liked it. It was the shield of the Phantom Mask. Hendrik began to attack. Not bad, so Chris is not just a spiritualist who can summon. Thanks to the multi-class feature, he transferred all of her buffs and skills to Hendrik. So now the hero will show support for a real multi-class. Hendrik's speed has increased significantly. The Phantom Mask has given him skills. Shane started shooting back at him. However, Hendrik doesn't care about any bullets. She won't be able to escape. While Shane tried to protect herself with a barrier, Hendrik summoned a thunder dragon. Coming closer to her, he nevertheless stepped on the gift that helped her get to this place. The nuclear mine detonated, causing an explosion of incredible proportions. Damn, what world did Shane come from that she uses such technology? Chris managed to avoid the blast, but the bullet still pierced his chest. Checkmate, Shane moved closer. This dragon is no longer able to fight. Only he, the wounded ghost mask, remains. Chris doesn't even know. She seems to really think so. Apparently, Shane forgot what he said. Hendrik is very resilient. The girl realized that the guys had been pretending all this time. Hendrik is furious that she dared to make him look so disgusting. He began to incinerate everything around him. After all, the strongest creature in the tower is different from the others. However, Shane and her machines had not yet exhausted all their strength. She ordered maximum power and declared fire. Hendrik asked what was wrong. Shane had called a swarm of flies here. The girl broke out in a cold sweat. She and Chris swore not to kill each other, but Hendrik will make Shane beg for death. However, she is confident that she can stop him and summoned Baijay at maximum power. Chris's recovery is too slow even with the holy power. It seems like these are some kind of special bullets. And after Hendrik took on this appearance, the hero's buffs and defensive techniques disappeared. It was as if his essence had turned over all the mana that was here. Shane said that the dragon was strong, sitting on top of him. Hundreds of her copies surrounded Hendrik. He controls all the mana here, but she somehow managed it. Shane said it wasn't magic, it was science. Hologram, it seems that even the master of mana himself can't do anything about it. And also, all the weapons are real. Hendrik just chuckled. Such toys were useless against him. And then Shane prepared a huge machine gun, almost the size of the dragon itself. Yes, it is the most powerful and terrible weapon. She did not want to use it. Great, then Hendrik will also fight with all his might. The dragon's fireball and Shane's rocket met in mid-air, covering the entire sky with a blinding blast wave. There was a huge crater left. Antimatter bomb, that's why she didn't want to use it. She had a power overheat while maintaining barriers. It is impossible to maintain normal operation of the aircraft. Okay, Shane told the system that she was doing well and could rest. But this bastard, he's still able to fight. Suddenly, his wing began to crumble, and Hendrik himself fell to the ground with a loud crash. Shane smiled, thinking that she really did it, but she calmed down too soon. There are two of them against her, have you forgotten? There's still Chris left, and he speaks well, despite the hole in his chest. But Shane said his handsome face hidden behind the mask wouldn't solve anything. Her weapon alone is enough for him. Let him just admit defeat. Chris disagrees. They'll find out if he's lost when they fight, and that's when he eats the dragon's scales. The heroes absolutely need the information that Shane has. Chris must get to know her at all costs. This is the power of the dragon. So that's why dragons are called masters of mana. It feels like Chris is all-powerful. He summoned Gungnir onto Shane and then activated random shooting. She doesn't understand what's going on. It's really dragon magic. Shane initially thought that the phantom mask was also a dragon. No, he just ate Hendrik's scales, after which his energy changed. Can Chris really use the power of the objects he eats? The hero shouts that she is too slow in thinking and is ready to pounce on her. Shane immediately grabbed her beam saber and began to defend herself. Chris asks what's wrong with her and where her bragging went. Where is that vaunted huntress? Shane got mad at that idiot from the 50th floor. Fine, she'll finish him off if that's what he wants. She activated the railgun chimera. Chris just laughed. Let's see who's stronger. Shane is shocked. He can also use dragon breath. Her body was not able to withstand this and she fell to the ground without strength. Chris immediately started coughing and Hendrik's scales came out of his throat. I haven't been able to fully adopt the dragon's power yet. I'll have to try again later. By the way, the forest was almost completely destroyed. What to do now? After a while, Shane began to come to her senses. Her whole body ached. Finally, she woke up. Hendrik was just thinking whether to wake her up or not. Shane is shocked that he came to his senses before her. Maybe it's because he's a dragon. But seeing a huge black and purple dome above her, she asked what this place was. It was a barrier. Hendrik and Shane were both unconscious and everything around them was in pieces. The hero couldn't leave this mess. The girl asked him if he was having fun. In short, she thought she could handle it, but she lost. Although what could she do against a monster with the power of 4 great beings? Shane underestimates the boys. Hendrik asked why she even suggested such a bet. It was just a great chance to fight a dragon. How could Shane pass it up? The heroes are simply shocked. She did this just because of this, but this is a dragon of the ground floor. Naturally, Shane wanted to know which of them was stronger. Hendrik can't argue with that. And Chris says to try to contradict her for the sake of this barrier. He used all the magic power he had been collecting all this time. Okay, now that Shane has come to her senses, she must tell me as she promised. The main question is who put a bounty on their heads? To begin with, she will give the first clue. More than one person is hunting the heroes. The bounty on the heroes' heads was put out by the guild union. Hendrik asked what kind of guild union this was. He should know about the punishments. Shane says that once you reach the top floor, you can't influence the lower floors. Therefore, he supports the guilds of the lower floors, luring them to his side. Guilds on the lower floors lure guilds on even lower floors, and those on even lower floors. This way, they will be able to strengthen their forces in a chain. This is the union of guilds. Hendrik said there weren't many of them in the tower. If you do a little digging, you might find out who it is. But suddenly, Chris replied that there was no need for that. There is only one who maintains his power and uses this method. This is the Songa Guild Alliance. Kane Pellin of the Star Nine. Shane said Chris got it right. Kane has gathered the entire Star Nine. Donis Taylog, the swordsman of the Star Nine, knows why he has summoned them. They say that the sacred guild Sanha is not going through the best of times right now. Merlin, the great magician, realized that they were talking about the Phantom Mask, the same one who reached the 50th floor. Dan John, the Poison King, was surprised that some weaklings had gotten ahead of them. Carmen came up and asked if he had said everything. Donis asked if she was asking for trouble and took out his sword. Kane asked if he was sure that the next attack would not be on the Sana Guild. Donis fell silent. Kane considered the Phantom Mask a sprout that dared to threaten them. However, now he considers the Phantom Mask to be a collection of sprouts. And what? Donis is interested in how Kane proposes to deal with this. Do they really have to do it personally? No, Kane said there would be serious penalties for doing so. Naturally, they should hire someone. He has already decided who he will send. Shane said it was the same 300th floor, but there was such a big difference. Still, kings differ in level. The mission failed, and there was also an information leak. After meeting Shane, the traces of the ghost mask's companions became very faint. She was fed to a huge cobra named Camille for lunch. In the dream, someone was calling Leah for help, repeating it over and over again. She suddenly woke up on the roof and was immediately met by Chris. Leah asked where the girl and Hendrik were. The hero replied that they had gone to gather information. The boys are being hunted by unusual creatures. Looks like they were doing surveillance, just like Shane said. Since Leah is okay, they will go. She asked curiously where. It seemed that Leah had already forgotten. Their next target is the black market on the 51st floor. While walking around the fair, Miho asked if she could try some of the food. Chris gave his permission, since there was still time before the black market opened. Leah was in the clouds. She kept wondering what that dream meant. Chris asked her what was wrong, if she wanted to eat something. Leah apologized, she was thinking. And then Miho, her eyes shining, ran up with a whole mountain of goodies and offered Leah something to eat. The girl agreed with a smile, but Chris clearly noticed something was wrong. It's evening. Before returning to the black market, we need to disguise ourselves. Leah is too visible. Chris dressed her in a cute dress and hat, and Miho will be in the form of a fox. The heroes came to the entrance to the black market. The guests actively passed the security and walked into the hall. Chris came up and showed them the black card. It's a card that allows you to enter any black market. The guard was embarrassed. You can only get one like that if you have a wealthy sponsor. Chris asked if there were any problems, and the guy quickly replied that there were none. He leads the heroes to the VIP seats. People were whispering that this man was the Phantom Mask. He even brought a girl with him. The guard led them to the balcony. These are private areas. When they ask for a price, you have to press the button in front. Chris nodded and asked not to come in until they called him themselves. Spotlights were pointed onto the stage and the host began the auction. Today, the heroes managed to get Noriga for summoning animals, bought for 350,000 gold. There were too few normal goods and so many people. Chris thought something was wrong. There are too many people crowded on such a low floor. This means that something grandiose is going to happen. So the presenter introduces the next lot. Leah suddenly jumped from the balcony down to the stage. The closer she got to the stage, the louder the calls for help became. Now Leah is already walking, but someone clearly wasn't letting her in. She demanded that the guy get out of the way, but he continued to hold her back. The nasty man asked how she dared to covet what he had his eye on. What an impudent girl. Chris told him to get lost. Who is the guy touching? The bodyguard and the orc himself recognized the ghost mask. Chris asked Leah if she was okay, if there was any problem. She said that there was a voice coming from the product. The host said there had been a bit of a riot. The auction was running hot because of the good stuff. So, let's continue. Finally, the next lot is presented. Seeing him, Leah was stunned, remembering herself walking through her village in the forest with flowers. The item turned out to be an item that belonged to a goblin that had become extinct, a flower-shaped decoration. Leah was furious that they dared to touch things of their race and put them up for auction. Chris told her to trust him. So, the host announced to the ladies and gentlemen that the bidding had begun. The starting price was 100,000 gold. The room started going crazy, the stakes were going up every second, and then that fat orc offered 1 million. The judge asked if there were any other suggestions. The man was already happy that his collection would now be expanded. He regrets, of course, that he was unable to make a stuffed animal. Perhaps he should be satisfied with this. But Leah won't let this thing go to such a freak. But suddenly, she was stopped by the hand of the presenter, who was already ready to give the jewelry to the man. And then someone names the sum of 3 million. The hall is stunned. This is a huge amount of money. Chris repeated the amount again. 3 million. If the orc didn't want to give more, he could get lost. The presenter banged the table uncertainly, announcing that the lot was going for 3 million. People didn't think the ghost mask had so much money. The orc is furious. Well, it seems that with their desire to end the bidding at the maximum rate, the heroes attracted too much attention. We need to get out of here quickly. That's why Chris asked to prepare the goods as soon as possible. Later, Leah thanked Chris very much. After all, 3 million is a lot of money. He replied that it was not his money. Let her thank the Golden Lich later. Suddenly, the spirit hugged Leah from behind and thanked her. Yes, she repeated to herself once again that for the sake of general peace, she would certainly take revenge. Now Chris understood why Leah was so worried about it. The soul of the dead goblin girl was in that hairpin. And then the orc's bodyguard tried to attack the hero from behind. Moving further away, Chris realized that he had seen him at the auction. That same fat guy. Well, these are such offensive words, but the orc gave the hero this thing. Chris replied that since the man wanted it so much, then we had to bargain there. He says right away that he will never give up the hairpin and he doesn't need the money either. Chris told him to get lost before he got hurt. The fat man laughed. He didn't need that stupid trinket. He pointed at Leah. Now he could stuff a real goblin. She told him to try if he could and pounced. Chris screamed that he shouldn't get in too early, but he couldn't intervene because that guy attacked him. Chris will be fought by that fat guy's bodyguard. He's on Hendrix level, no, even higher. Leah activated her combat foresight. This orc is quite strong but too slow. If she uses combat foresight, she can win the battle. However, suddenly his hammer began to spray poison. Leah quickly covered her nose with her hand and held her breath. And while she was losing her vigilance, the man pinned her to the ground. He told her that everyone who rose to the 50th floor of the tower must have some kind of trump card, or better yet, two. And this is a special poison that paralyzes goblins, which the orc transformed into a poison. For some time, Leah will not be able to move even a finger. She replied that some paralyzing poison could not end her. Leah would avenge all the goblins, because she was the last one. Orc doesn't care about her story. Don't be offended. This is not the end of Leah's life, but a new beginning. Although he will have to calm her down a little so that she will shut up. The man swung his dagger, saying that Leah would join his collection and start a new life, and that she should consider it an honor. And then Chris, with a lightning-fast movement, cut off his hand. The orc's face shows that he is very curious about how the ghost mask moves inside the poison cloud. It's a pity, but this poison doesn't work on him. The guy is too ugly to be a scarecrow, and he doesn't deserve it. I'll just have to kill him. Chris said not to pretend he only cut off one arm, and now he will cut off the second one. And then that guy tried to interfere again. How fast! If Chris had reacted a second later, he would have had a hard time. Something stopped his blow. It seemed to be magic. Chris began to shoot the guy with a continuous fire of 5 fingers. Sword and magic. Both of Chris's skills are high class. The guy assumed that he had a hidden class. And this power. It feels like the guy is facing a veteran of a high floor. The bodyguard told the orc that the situation had changed and that he should leave here and hide somewhere. The man screamed that there was a live goblin right in front of him. How could he get away? The guy held a sword to him, reminding him of the terms of the agreement. He will protect him, and the orc should not interfere with the course of the battle. Then the guy told the orc to disappear and he ran away. If he couldn't take the goblin, he'd at least take the hairpin. He snatched it from Miho's clutches. Leah immediately rushed after him. This time, she wouldn't miss. The guy was surprised that the goblin was already moving. Or was the gas's effect so short-lived? But he won't let her catch up with the master. Now Chris stopped him. Where is the bodyguard going? If you started a battle, you need to finish it. Houses were simply destroyed to pieces by these repeated sword blows. Chris, seeing the strength of this guy, said that he had no place in this hall. And he replied that it was in this hall that he could meet such strong masters as the Phantom Mask. Chris asked what was wrong. The guy was a pathetic little rat who was afraid to climb up. This really angered the bodyguard and he threw the hero away. But he made a few wrong moves and Chris hit his body with the sword. The boy was bleeding and remembering. The floor he reached was 431. There he saw the true appearance of the tower. Fraud, deceit, betrayal. This is the lowest that people are capable of. Because of the betrayal of his comrades, this guy lost his eyes there. And now Chris calls this place a hole. The guy shouts that at least here no one hides their true character. He hit the ground as Chris dodged. The hero said that he was also betrayed and killed once, so he knows how this guy feels. It was as if something had short-circuited in the blind man's head. After all, his psyche is too weak. Chris shouts that the truly strong man rises to the very top. And then he punishes his traitors. At this moment, the hero dealt the guy the decisive blow. By doing so, he had cornered him. Chris would not run away like he had, because the hero needs to crush everyone who betrayed him. Meanwhile, the orc continued to run, promising that he would also make a scarecrow out of the ghost mask and that goblin. A little more and there will be a busy street. Once he mingles with the crowd, no one will be able to find him. The man was almost at his goal when Leah cut him with her sword. He will no longer be able to collect the collection. She was very surprised when she turned around. A golden card fell out of the orc's jacket. The guy asked Chris how it was, why he didn't kill him. The hero replied that the guy still had unfinished business. Those bastards who did this to his eyes, they all need to be crushed. The guy replied that when he was done with them, he would find Chris and he would regret not having killed him. The hero smiled. He will wait with impatience. Later, Vulcan taunted Chris that he was almost there, but decided to leave his enemy alive. Something like sympathy, since he is also taking revenge. The hero told the old man to shut up. And then Leah started catching up with Chris. She's alive, she's fine. The girl said that she dealt with that fat man, but she showed him a gold card that was among his things. It looks like the one Chris had. This card seems to be related to the auction, but it cannot be used for payment. Usually such items are a pass. It allows you to participate in the auction of the highest level. This time, Chris might be able to get his hands on a rare rank item. Leah began to apologize to him for the fact that because of her, they all almost ended up in danger. Chris patted her on the head, telling her it was okay. He knows what that hairpin means to her. A hero can understand that. But Chris only said to keep in mind that sometimes, for the sake of revenge, you have to be cold-blooded. The hero presented the guard at the entrance with a map of the secret passage. This map will open the corresponding event. There are fewer people, and this is understandable. Few have a secret passage. So the host presents the last lot for today. He asks if everyone is ready for the main course. The one is finally coming. People are in anticipation. It's been a long time since something like this happened. Everyone is definitely aiming to win this lot. There's some movement at the auction. It looks like the others are a little nervous too. I wonder what's there. And then a cage covered with a red cloth was lowered onto the stage. Chris decided that it was either a sacred animal or a relic. The host says that this treat is prepared especially for the guests. The last lot. Chris was shocked when he saw that these psychos were selling it all. The cage contained a dark elf slave who was captured secretly. Such a strong, ominous aura. Chris doesn't think this elf girl ended up here because of good circumstances. Strangely, besides the sinister energy of this dark elf, he senses pure mana of the level of a high elf. The ancestors of the dark elves were exposed to demons. Pure mana is the specialty of the complete opposite, the high elves. Their auras are completely incompatible. But Vulcan said that this is not entirely true. If someone decided to forcefully influence a high elf with the help of demons, but the high elves are not so easily corrupted. Only 4 great beings could do that. Is this really their doing? People immediately started to give out sums starting from 1.5 million. Suddenly, an Elijah woman named Hamiel of Netok's level appeared in the hall. She approached the stage and offered 5 million gold. The elf girl screams, asking how Hamiel dared. The elf will not allow herself to be sold to her, not Hamiel. The prisoner promises that as soon as he gets out of here, he will kill her first. Hamiel says to stop being angry. Let the princess think for herself. Rather than being a toy in the hands of these vile old men, it is better to become her pet. The host said that if there is no more time, then they will end the bidding. 5,500,000. The elf is crying. Is this the end? And suddenly, someone offered another 4.5 million on top. 10 million gold. Hamiel asks who dared to come up with such incredible figures. And then, Chris showed up on the balcony. He told her that she was doing pretty good math in her head for a dumb pigeon. People are excited. The maximum price has appeared on the 51st floor. Hamiel recognized the phantom mask. She was clearly in a panic. How dare he covet what was hers? And then she tried to force him to give up the bidding. Chris raised his hands and asked mockingly if this was possible. Hamiel demands that he stop drawing attention to himself. She doesn't think he can pay that amount. I feel most sorry for the presenter. What should he do in such a situation? Hamiel sighed and offered a higher price, 11 million. Chris immediately offered 20 million. Vulcan and Leah are shocked. They scream that he is crazy. The hero said that if Hamiel is missing, then he should get lost. She couldn't even imagine that he was really ready to pay that kind of money for an elf. Chris is pissed off at the way this stupid pigeon is staring at him. He could just poke her eyes out. The time will come when he will destroy all the Ilios, but for now he cannot cope with it on his own. However, with money, Chris can do it. That's enough for him now. Hamiel is outraged and asks where the Phantom Mask could get so much money. The host announced that if there were no more offers, the Dark Elf would leave for 20 million gold. After the bargaining, he asked the heroes to wait a little. He would bring the elf in a minute. Chris was also given a magic key with which he could free the girls from their shackles. The host asked with a forced smile when the hero planned to come again. Chris told him to leave and quickly bring the elf. Leah timidly took her brother's hand and asked if he was really ready to use the dark elf as a slave. Chris was indignant. He wasn't crazy enough to have slaves. But Vulcan asked what was wrong with him. He was a soul. He couldn't even hit anyone. Damn it, Chris has a word and he says 10. The hero asked Leah what was the matter. Did she really take him for such a person? No, it's just that this elf looks beautiful. But alas, Leah won't say that. Hamiel caught up with the heroes. It was good that they hadn't left yet. She introduced herself. Chris immediately said that if she came for his lot, she could give up this idea. One of them had already gone to the other world. No way. Hamiel apologized for asking, but she just wants to know why the hero bought her. Why does she apologize and ask? Or does she think that everyone should be nice to people like her? Hamiel sighed. There was nothing she could do. She would like to get to know the Phantom Mask better, but she had already reported it to those above. Chris imagined chopping Hamiel's head off on the spot. But no, he couldn't kill her now. He could have used all his strength and killed that pigeon despite the punishment. But then, even more powerful creatures will start hunting him. If Chris doesn't get stronger, he won't be able to fight them openly. For now, he should wait. By the way, Hamiel said it was a beautiful hairpin. It's a shame we won't see it again. She whispered in Leah's ear that it was a pity that she had burned everything. So this pigeon creature wasn't hunting for the lot. Its goal was to provoke Leah. But it's okay. The girl knows that now she needs to be cold. Hamiel has a feeling that they will meet again soon. She will be waiting on the 100th floor. Chris tried to catch up to find out some more information, but it instantly disappeared. Okay, the hero doesn't know what this alien woman has planned, but let her wait for him. He will come for her soul. Outside the 51st floor, Vulcan ordered all warrior spirits to detain the enemies and not let anyone near the master. No one should hear this conversation. Okay, the elf asked what Chris was going to do with her. The hero said not to be afraid. If he wanted to do something to her, he wouldn't have brought the children. The elf laughed. They're all in this together. What's the difference between adults and children? She may believe it or not, it's her choice. Chris first asked the girl's name. She is Elion von Yggdrasil. Chris's eyes widened. This is the royal family in honor of the sacred tree of the elves, Yggdrasil. So this girl is from the royal elven family. Dozens of fighters were already heading into the forest. A real elf from the royal family. Such high elves can grow up quite well, and when she becomes a dark elf, she will have a fashionable demonic power. By the way, Hamiel, it seems like he and Elione have something in common. This girl is perfect for a rebel. Elione thinks about how she can escape. These shackles are holding back her power. No, even if she takes it off, she still won't be able to use her power right away. We have to wait until Chris starts. Suddenly, he opened the cage. The hero said to get up, he needed to ask Elion something. She tried to break away and run, but immediately fell. Elves are skilled at manipulating mana or summoning spirits, but they are not particularly strong. Chris bought Elion for 20 million gold. She asks what he is up to, and although Elion is perfect for this place, no one will even know what he did to the defenseless elf. She asked if Chris was going to satisfy his lust with her, like the other participants in the auction. Leah was outraged that Elione was saying such things in front of a child and covered Miho's ears. Her brother was not like that at all. King Mihu says that a true hero must have at least one concubine. What psychos! This is not at all what they thought. Suddenly, there was an explosion in the distance. Chris ordered Vulcan to report. The robbers are chasing ghosts. They are looking for a rich man who robbed an auction. It seems that the location of the heroes has become known to others. A huge number of people are approaching here. Chris thought maybe it was Hamiel's doing. He told Miho and Leah to help Vulcan and not let anyone in. Leah asked again if it was really not like that. Chris got mad and repeated that it was not. He asked how Elion was if she felt like talking. She quietly asked if Chris had anything to drink. Thanks to Miho and Leah, Vulcan gained time. He used the mass arrest spell, Soul Thorn. Elione had a hangover and said that Chris's comrades were quite strong. He was probably much stronger than them. But if he has such power, why did he just let that winged one go at the auction? Chris could have easily killed her. Hamiel had just weakened from the punishment. The hero replied that he would not achieve anything with his strength now, so he suppresses his emotions for a higher purpose. He and Elione are very different. The elf asked if Chris had ever cut open the stomachs of his family. One day, her father shouted at her to press more and cut his heart. Afterwards, he praised his daughter. He could only pass on this technique through death. The man took out the Yggdrasil fruit from himself. He entrusted their future to his daughter. Then her brother Helid chased after Elion, shouting that their father had been seriously wounded. He's a traitor who sold out his own to the sacred beings. Helid would have grabbed her then. Her father shouted for Elion to eat the fruit quickly, and suddenly someone's arrow hit him in the throat, and the fruit was split, and it was just Hamiel. She infused Elion with demonic energy. Elika puzzled over it for a long time. What punishment would be more suitable for the one who refuses to be with them, the noble princess of the elves? Hamiel holds a very pure demonic energy in her hands, which was lent to her by a friend. With it, she can crush a high elf with one blow. Elione is so proud of her nobility, and Hamiel wanted to desecrate that pride. Her plan was to make the elf princess slowly fall into hell, and that's how Elione ended up on the slave market. And met Chris? Now it's clear? So, the sacred creatures hunted the elves too. But the elves of the 300th floor are too powerful to be exterminated so easily. Even the sacred creatures cannot cope with their mana and spells. In such cases, the most effective thing would be to use traitors from among your own. And so ended Elion's story. She lived to help others. But what does ended mean? Those freaks who made her a slave and took over the kingdom and Elion too. They're still alive. Chris said that until one of them dies, it's not over. He offered the princess to join the confrontation. The hero will help her deal with the enemies. Leah was already exhausted from the fight. She keeps wondering if that dark elf will steal her brother's heart. This won't do. She has to go there right now. But then suddenly, a red orc swung at Leah. Maybe he came running towards the sound. Chris finished him off quickly. He asked if Leah was okay, and she was wondering where that dark elf was. If she's talking about Elion, she's gone. Chris removed her shackles and offered to kill her brothers and sisters. The hero reminded her of how they treated her. She could very well take revenge on them. And Elion must do it properly. Pay them back several times more. Chris would do exactly the same. Leah wondered who he was going to take revenge on. The hero answered, to the Star Nine and also to the sacred beings. Elione asked to stop talking about her problems. For her, it was nothing more than some kind of grumbling. And then she took off. As Chris understood, the elf would not join the confrontation. Yes, she is leaving to gain strength equal to his. First, she will become stronger, and then she will come to him again. At parting, Elione asked his name. Not a nickname, but his real name. The hero introduced himself as Death Star Chris Morris. The elf immediately remembered Chris's spiritual master. There were a few things that weren't clear about his death. That's it, now it's clear. Elione said with a smile that if she died, Chris could take her body or soul for himself, and then flew away. If the hero finished, Vulcan suggested leaving here before others came, having heard the conversation. Okay, now it's dangerous to stay on one floor for too long. The main thing for the guys now is to get to the 60th floor. The Golden Lich said he would be there too. But William is having a hard time right now too. He killed a lot of mercenaries in his trading company. Damn, Lich got caught. He didn't think an entire army would come for him. The trading company was engulfed in fire and carnage. The bandits attacked the puppeteer with cries of the sacred state. They created this trading company to sponsor the confrontation. If the connection between their movement and the Golden Lich becomes known to the Star Nine, then that's the end. The Golden Lich was not allowed to interfere in this matter, so the puppeteer intended to protect this place himself. The puppets dealt with the small fighters, but then someone powerful took aim at the puppeteer. However, the guy managed to dodge. Jose Yan, the leader of the giant behemoth guild, said that it was not bad for a pathetic puppeteer. The puppeteer realized that they wanted to turn this place into ruins. His remaining puppets were finished off. Benvolio says that the puppeteer must destroy all the puppets. He tells Jose not to interfere and to back off. Does he really think Jose doesn't know that there are bonuses for destroying major characters? Ben replied that it was his guild, the White Swallow, that was on the puppeteer's tail, and Jose wanted a piece of the pie. What a voracious appetite, like a pig. Jose screams that if only Ben's people hadn't stolen the information on the 10th floor. The puppeteer realized that now was his chance, while the guild leaders were distracted. He grabbed them and said that they would be his puppets. But then some girl attacked the puppeteer from behind. May, the leader of the guild partisan, apologized for interfering in the showdown. She caught the puppeteer and asks Asura to write it down. Asurham is the guild master of the Lord of the Divine. He says that the guild masters allowed the ghost mask to strike. Now they must bear responsibility for desecrating the honor of the holy state. They came here and disgraced themselves. Ben replied that they don't have to listen to Asura's lectures. May thinks that since she's strong, she can show off here. Is she really Kane's representative? But she doesn't care. Her task is to grab what's hers. The puppeteer won't let her break through this place. Even if he had to give his life, the guy used the puppeteer technique on himself. May and Jose are in shock. They thought the puppeteer was finished. The Golden Lich is his goal, his dream, and his ideal. Guildmasters will not be able to take a single step from here. The puppeteer has turned himself into a puppet and uses powers beyond what is possible. Benvolio told everyone to dodge, but it's like something is blocking the cook's attack. And then a huge snake loomed over him. It hit him and there was an explosion. Death King Basil and Demon King Tune arrived too late. Benvolio shouts that these are the ones who reached the 300th floor. But what are they doing here? Asura replied that they were mercenaries who would participate in their plan. They were entrusted with managing the operation. Benvolio can't accept this. Jose is outraged that they have to listen to these mercenaries. Asura replied that this was an order from Lord Kane. Or do the guildmasters want to go against the Star Nine? Ben tells him to do whatever he wants and he, Jose and May leave. They've just wasted their time. But suddenly that white snake bit off Ben's leg. Not only are they untalented, but they also resist the orders of the Star Nine. Asa said that people like them were not needed by the sacred state. This is the will of Lord Kane. And Ben's body instantly caught fire. Toon said that in life the guildmasters were unfaithful soldiers, but now everything will change. He ordered the dead guildmasters to rise up and fight to the very end for the guild. Wow, now Asura can use those who were the guildmaster. This is the Demon King style. Toon asked where the Phantom Mask had gone. Asa replied that it wasn't there. He hadn't reached the 60th floor yet. But his trading company is here, which brings him money. We need to take over this place and slowly take care of the Phantom Mask. But suddenly, the skeleton put a dagger to Asura's throat. He asked what it meant. Toon said that if Phantom Mask isn't here, he's leaving. Does he really want to go against Star Nine's orders too? Toon asked not to worry. He promises that he will get the Phantom Mask. He agreed to this task for only one reason: to kill our hero. Let the spiritual master wait for him. The heroes finally caught up with Hendrik. It looks like there was an attack here too. It took longer than the dragon thought. He asked if they had found anything valuable. It's a long story. Suddenly, a dove flew up to the boys. This is the homing pigeon that belongs to the Golden Lich. He relayed an emergency message. Leech told Chris to work on moving up to the 60th floor first. A huge disaster has happened. The base facility is under attack. The trade guild has been attacked. The Golden Lich asks you to come quickly. He won't be able to hold out here for long without help. Chris needs to try to stall for time. Vulcan asks what this means. The 60th floor, they helped the heroes. The Golden Lich controls the merchant guilds under different names, because managing the tower's finances under one person's name is too risky. Damn, looks like they've found out something. Wait, but Hendrik said that the Golden Lich is one of the strongest who reached the 300th floor. Even if a fashionable army appeared there, how could it cope with him? But Hendrik himself heard everything. If William could intervene personally, he would not open guilds under other people's names. Once the Golden Lich intervenes in the battle, it will be known to all that his merchant guild and the confrontation are in league. Then one attack won't do. The Holy Guild will smash him to smithereens. Now the heroes have decided on their goal. They will go to the 60th floor and deal with the gang from the connected guild. Vulcan ordered everyone to gather. They will be transported in space to the next floor. But suddenly someone attacked him. Basil and Tune apologized, but the heroes cannot go to the 60th floor. The snake released its venom, and Chris ordered everyone to dodge. They quickly moved to the roof. Hendrik asked what it was. Chris replied that if these people showed up at exactly this moment, then everything was clear. They were sent by that bastard Kane. Suddenly, the heroes were attacked by a huge warrior spirit. The hero quickly took Leah and Miho. It was the undead. So, Tune is a necromancer, and next to him is a snake charmer, which doesn't look very nice. Hendrik shouted that he would take the rest of them. The snake turned its attention to him. Oh, Basil saw that this guy was from the dragon race. He offered Hendrik to become his pet. Yes, Basil thinks he can take him to the highest position. It will be interesting to see how the dragon's scales will shine. Hendrik yelled at the nasty bastard that he refused and started attacking again. Meanwhile, Toon told Chris that this dragon would not help him. Apparently, this man is from the 300th floor. He is even stronger than Shane. Well, let's see what the necromancer is capable of. Chris told Leah and Miho to help Hendrik, and once they figured it out, head to the 60th floor, and our hero will take care of Tune. And the necromancer himself wanted this. The spirits of both sides began to fight. Usually, necromancers give up their positions just because of the skeletal warriors of Tune, so the rumors about the Phantom Mask were not lying. So as class as spiritual master, Chris asked, and what next? Tune replied that this title was too high for a hero and required him to give up his strength. What if Chris doesn't want to? Fucking idiot. Then Tune will take it by force. Leah and Miho ran to Hendrik, but the ground broke and someone's huge mouth slammed them shut. Tune says that if Chris doesn't give it up, his comrades will die a painful death. The hero told the son of a bitch to shut up and put it away. The bandits were fighting the Golden Lich's guards. One guy thought he had a rock thrown at him, but it turned out to be gold. What luck to find gold in such a mess. And suddenly there were dozens of explosions and the fighters had to flee. The vanguard continues to be blocked using the same scheme. Asur thinks it will be impossible to penetrate the building. Maybe there is some incredibly powerful mage in the trading company? And then William launched his Golden Knight and blew up the robbers. But this method won't last long either. They'll figure him out soon. We need to hurry. Chris rushed towards the huge monster and demanded that he let the girls go. But Tune won't let him go that easily. He blocked the hero's movements. His name is Demon King Tune. He will take away Chris's power as a spiritual master and become the successor to the Death Star. What? The hero's successor? Meanwhile, Miho woke up inside the mouth, and they were already surrounded by a whole army of skeleton warriors. The monster began to go deeper into the ground. It looks like it's trying to escape by absorbing the girls. Hendrik wanted to attack, but was stopped by the snake's mouth. It's not such a problem, he started to block it. But then another snake crawled out of its mouth. She grabbed Hendrik, and he quickly threw her off. But the snake still injected its poison into him. And then he saw that very day, that's for sure. The day his home was terrorized by dragons, the source of his anger. Suddenly, someone was surprised that Hendrik hated dragons. Basil said that a dragon that hates dragons is strange. It turns out he can see everything, but how? And then it became clear that this was the power of the snake that bit. That's right, this little guy amplifies the enemy's negative memories and transfers them to Basil. But he just can't understand how one can hate such beautiful creatures. Moreover, Hendrik himself can become a dragon. That's great. The guy pressed himself into his sword. What does Basil know? These are the enemies who destroyed his homeland. His anger because he could not take revenge and was born in the body of an enemy. Basil doesn't dare to yelp if he doesn't understand. He asks, what is it? Hendrik gets angry because of such a trifle. Basil doesn't understand. He became a dragon. Isn't that the price for everything? Hendrik can't even imagine how many Basil killed to collect these snakes, and all for the sake of achieving such beauty. Such a sacrifice even seems cheap to him. Oh yeah, I forgot to introduce myself. He is the Death King Basil and loves everything that has scales. If Hendrik goes over to his side, he will make the boy love his true form. Well then, the hero will introduce himself too. He is the Dragon Slayer Hendrik. He will destroy everything that has scales. Then Basil said that they would have to fight. Look where his filthy mouth will lead him. Hendrik cut down the snakes without much difficulty, but there is no end in sight. Let him attack as much as he wants. A snake like Basil is not able to defeat him. And then the biggest cobra of them all appeared. So the others were bait. The snakes surrounded Hendrik and squeezed. It won't take long to die like this. We need to get out of here quickly. The dragon tried to call a teleport. But then Basil put his hand on his face, saying that he had caught him. He says that Hendrik was too inattentive and he is still weak to fight him. Basil activated the Ophiuchus characteristic to make the dragon his. Everything is ready, now Hendrik is his slave. There is only one way to escape Basil's control, to turn into a dragon and get rid of Camille. But Basil knows that Hendrik won't be able to do this, because he has too much anger towards dragons. And Hendrik himself is no exception. Basil believes that he has not yet been able to accept his dragon nature. He doesn't want to become an enemy again, so Basil tells him to just obediently become his pet. Suddenly, Hendrik heard Chris's voice from the day of the Shane fight. He was asking what kind of nonsense this was. Hendrik doesn't want to become an enemy, so he's just going to let his power rot away? The hero had a question for him. Who is this guy? Hendrik answered that he is a dragon slayer. But no, he's wrong. They're the ones who got to the 50th floor. And they can defeat the one who has reached the 300th floor if they use all their strength. Chris then said that they were still weak, so they had to use whatever means they could. And now Hendrik has turned into a dragon again. Basil is shocked. He never expected this. Yes, Hendrik is very weak, so when fighting against those who are stronger, he must always try his best. He will destroy Basil by any means necessary. Meanwhile, he was staring at its beautiful scales. Hendrik is the best. Basil will do everything to get him. Toon is slowly starting to give in to Chris. And this idiot also completely copied the Death Star's combat technology, the technology of the hero from his past life. Chris needs to save those who are locked up and go to the Golden Lich. No, such thoughts only hinder the battle. Once we deal with Toon, everything will be resolved. The hero asked if he learned this fighting technique from Death Star Chris Morris. Exactly, just like our hero. Then Toon won't be able to win it because it's stronger than the Death Star. Toon was indignant. How dare the Phantom Mask say such a thing? But suddenly the hero disappeared. And then he suddenly jumped into a whole crowd of enemy skeleton warriors. Chris combined divine power, demonic power, and the summoning of holy demons. Toon is perplexed. How is this possible? Two incompatible forces have united in one body. No one has ever achieved this. Chris's name is listed in the achievement tower. The tower had never seen a single being possess both divine and demonic powers. What needs to be done to defeat the Death Star? The enemy has a stronger army. But Chris needs to trample him at all costs, just like that time with those guys. Using a special method, the hero will destroy the beast and fight against it. Only the object has changed, but the structure remains the same. Chris doesn't quite like it, but it's the right way. The hero asked again, but Toon called himself the successor of the Death Star. Since it has the same level, we can roughly understand the abilities of the Death Star. Chris said that he too stood like a fool before the divine power and then died. Toon called upon all the most powerful spirits and demanded that the Death Star not be desecrated. Yes, if it all ends here, it will be a shame. With renewed strength, Chris rushed off. In front of the divine and demonic power, the beast can do nothing more. The hero will cut the main body. Chris attacked, but something blocked him. Toon remained unharmed. But why? The hero put divine power into his blow. That's right. Like Chris said, that's how the Death Star died. And does he really think Toon wasn't prepared for that kind of blow? Chris will pay with his life right here for all the insults directed at him. The spirits of Toon use protective magic. Divine and demonic powers are blocked. And these creatures too. All these undead are quite strong, especially the guildmasters. Simple blows are not enough. In that case, you will have to use divine and demonic power at the same time. Chris received a warning. These powers are opposite to each other and cannot be used simultaneously. But he just told the system to shut up. If he said so, let him do so. It's the only way. Damn, the system still doesn't want to mix them. Great. Then Chris told one of the spirits to eat it. The system can fail as much as it wants. Both forces are his anyway. Chris commanded the two forces and the warrior spirit to become one. Thus, he was able to defeat the undead. But Toon doesn't understand how. This protective magic is created to repel the power of the four sacred creatures. This means that Chris has a power that far exceeds theirs. But it just now didn't look like either divine or demonic power. The system congratulated. Chris acquired a special skill, the United Beginning. Divine and demonic power combined and formed an explosive force. Well, he likes it. Toon ordered the spirits of Jose and Beck Holio to cover him. But now Chris didn't care. He attacked Toon straight away, creating an inevitable explosion. Now that he was incapacitated, Chris held his sword to his throat. The hero is interested in why Toon is so fixated on the Death Star. But as he himself said, because he suits the tower's owner. Toon was then a small, defenseless boy. But Chris reminded him that the Death Star betrayed humanity and died. Does the guy still revere it? Toon screamed that the Death Star had been trapped by those freaks from Star 9. The hero is in complete shock. How did the guy find out? This is the truth about his death. Did Toon decide to reveal it? The guy doesn't believe that the Phantom Mask doesn't care. He has the spiritual master of the Star 9 in his hands. Isn't it interesting to know about his death? He was the greatest necromancer, and the Star 9, which included the Poloni siblings, killed him in mortal combat. Toon screams that he was trapped, and Chris Morris is innocent. The hero lied that he didn't even know. The Death Star could have pretended to be an idiot who was thirsty for power. That's it. There are still those in this tower who believe and remember our hero. Toon says that the hero does not dare to mock Chris. He acknowledges the abilities of the Phantom Mask, but not as a descendant of a dead star. Chris Morris wasn't just a benefactor to Toon. He had a power that was much brighter than the Star 9. Toon is immensely proud of him. He must defeat the Phantom Mask and fully assume the name of the Death Star. So that's what it feels like when a successor comes along. Great, gotta get this guy. Then the hero told Toon to show what he was capable of. The Death King sees that the Phantom Mask is not yet fully formed, but is already on the path of a spiritual master, and approaching his level of power. Those like him who dare to insult the Death Star, Toon will not allow his class. He summoned hundreds of night ghosts. Vulcan immediately came out and started blocking them with a soul laser. These are not ghost warriors, but second-rate ghosts. However, they are very similar to the warriors that Vulcan created at the very beginning. Did Toon really achieve this level on his own? The guy won't stop until he gets revenge for insulting the Death Star's name. Thune is obsessed with skills. If Chris hadn't been reborn, perhaps Thune really would have become the next Death Star. Well, then the hero must answer him properly. He leaves the ghosts to Vulcan, and he himself attacked Tune and ordered one skeleton warrior to rise up. Chris waited for a moment when he would be distracted, but when he threw a punch, Tune was able to block it. And then, right in front of the hero, an explosion occurred. These unformed ghost warriors, on the contrary, used this disadvantage to explode themselves. Chris needs to find a way to confront Tune. The guy says that this is the last step towards him. He used the Death Star technique, Coming of Spirits, a wave of spiritual power. It felt like Tune's power was about to engulf the entire world, including the hero. The guy already thought that this was the end, because this technique was invincible. But it was a huge shock. Maybe Tune isn't perfect. But how did the Phantom Mask manage to resist the Death Star's technology? Was that power unable to penetrate him? Chris said it was nice. It was like seeing himself in the past. As a reward, the hero will show the guy the real technique of Coming of Spirits. And as the souls consumed the body of the Death King, he breathed a sigh of relief. This was where the Death Star was. Chris pierced Thune's body with his sword and greeted him. The boy said in a weak voice that he was very pleased to meet the Death Star. Yes, they will meet again soon. So, a moment later, Chris greeted the ghost warrior Tune. He dropped to one knee and apologized for his rudeness. Thune did not recognize the Death Star and was also disloyal to his comrades. And then the huge beast that Tune had created burst out of the ground again. He lost his owner and went crazy. The guy said he would deal with him now. But Chris stopped him when he saw two pairs of eyes. Leah and Miho joyfully jumped out of the beast's mouth. The hero smiled broadly. What a joy it was that the girls were alive. Leah said that Miho charmed the beast and they managed to get out of there unharmed. And Leah covered while the fox concentrated her power. Tune doesn't understand something. One penetrated his powerful spell and charmed the undead, while the other dealt with all the skeletons that were inside. Suddenly, Hendrik's breath lit up from behind. It turns out that he has already finished too. Basil lay on the ground almost unconscious. Tune can't believe the dragon did it so easily. Hendrik returned to his human form and told the Death King that victory was his, and it was not easy. He put a sword to Basil's face and said that he was finished. There was no one left in it except these small worms nearby. Basil told his snake Scylla that it looked like they really were finished and apologized. Everyone froze in place as he suddenly devoured his own snake. Hendrik reacted quickly. It won't help Basil. The man told Scylla that it was really delicious. Now they will always be together. Basil laughed and suggested that they deal with this dragon together. How funny, he said that he loved snakes and was even proud of them. And they were just his expendable material. Now he has completely absorbed her. Basil asked what Hendrik knew about love. There is nothing more beautiful than becoming one. What a nasty guy. Chris told Leah and Miho to cover for Hendrik. But the dragon demanded that no one come near, that no one touch Basil. This monster is his prey. Hendrik hits the snake right in the mouth. But her tongue wrapped around the sword and sucked the dragon's hand inside. Now he can no longer use his sword, and Basil said that this is the end. Hendrik turned into a real beast. Basil was frightened by his face and he scratched his face with his claws. The man said that Hendrik was neither a dragon nor a man and asked if he was too disgusting. In the battle with him, Hendrik realized something and was grateful for it. He is a dragon slayer and nothing will change that. He defeated the strongest snake Scylla and drags her along with him. Tune told Phantom Mask that his comrades were amazing. Yes. Thanks to his faithful comrades, they will be able to climb the tower. Naturally, Tune was with them. The spirit only quietly thanked them. Hendrik wants to ask what happened between them, but they don't have time. That's right. On the 60th floor, the Golden Lich is in danger. The battle wasn't over yet, so Chris ordered everyone to go there. And then Tune blocked the way, saying that they can't go there. Now the troops on the 60th floor are led by Asa Hum. This is the leader of the Divine Lord Guild. which occupies the lower levels of the Holy Empire. Chris asked how strong they were. Toon replied that they were of the same level as him. They could be considered floor 300 paladins. Hendrik agrees that it won't be easy, but both Toon and Basila lost. He doesn't think they have no chance at all. But Toon said that wasn't the problem. After Asura was saved by the Pelans, he was completely loyal to them. William has dealt with the soldiers on the front lines. He thinks he can stall for time. And as a reward for his absolute loyalty, Asur was the only one of the guild leaders who received something, namely, divine power from the divine race. The Golden Lich is in a panic. Asur has resurrected the dead warriors. That is, Asur can equal the strength of the heavenly race. And right now, he ordered the warriors to attack. Leah says that this can't be, and Chris asks what to do then. There is no way. Is that why Toon suggests waiting until everyone and everything is destroyed? But no, there is a way to equalize the Death Star's powers with theirs. Toon said that Chris must consume his flesh. The hero is shocked, but the guy assures that he knows approximately what the Death Star is all about. Chris has the power to absorb objects. A dead body can be considered an object. Then all the power that Toon had been accumulating will become his. And Hendrik added something else. This Basil and the snakes were quite strong. Absorbing their power will add to Chris's strength. The hero thought that they were crazy because there were people who were waiting for at least their bodies. But Toon assured that there are no such people, and if there are, it is they themselves. He respects Chris, and if he can help with his small power, then there is no greater glory for him. Toon asks the Lord to accept his power. Chris sadly agreed. He would be an extension of their strength. The hero immediately began to absorb 2 corpses. Meanwhile, the warriors were already entering the building along with the magicians. Damn, they resurrect everything at once. They'll soon take over the building. The losses on the Golden Lich's side are only growing. Time must be gained by any means necessary. William will first divide the army, causing confusion, and then return to battle. And then an incredible stream of light burned through several buildings. William wondered if he had been discovered. But this is divine power. He can't even imagine who controls it. Suddenly, Asur said that he had finally found him. The guild leader was flying right in front of William. He finally recognized the unknown merchant helping Phantom Mask. Asur has come to punish the Golden Lich and the Phantom Mask. William said the boy didn't look like a holy star. There are probably those down there who are waiting for their benefit. Lord Cain gave Asura 2 orders. The first is to punish useless guild leaders. The second is to remove the Phantom Mask and all his assistants. Asura objected that Lord Cain's order was absolute and equal to the words of a deity. He had no need to think of other conditions. The Golden Lich told the fanatic that it wouldn't work out the way he wanted anyway. Asur asks how much longer William will run from him. Hell, if Hum finds out he is the Golden Lich, things will only get worse. William must continue to fight to keep Asur from revealing his identity, but how can he do that while hiding his power? It's strange that William doesn't use all his power. He used to show completely different skills, but now he only runs. Asur thought maybe this guy was hiding something. In that case, he should make him fight with all his might. Asur will find out what he is hiding. Does the guy really think he can protect his comrades this way? But suddenly, Hendrik intervened. The dragon smashed through the building as if it had come from nowhere. The soldiers are stuck in the rubble and hope that Lord Asur is okay. He heard that there was a dragon among Phantom Mask's friends. This means that he reached the 60th floor in one night and also dealt with Toon and Basil first. Chris came up and asked the guy if he was Asur. The hero also asked where he had to go to cut the throat of that bastard Cain. Leah is worried that her brother is fighting alone, but Hendrik reassures her, saying that Chris has that very thing. But suddenly, Asura's soldiers began to attack them from below. The warriors realized that these were the Ghost Mask's friends and ordered them to be thrown down. The Golden Lich said that we should deal with these warriors first. This Asura can even resurrect dead soldiers. In that case, Hendrik will burn them so that not even corpses remain. Meanwhile, Chris decided that this was easy prey and cut off Asura's arm. However, the limb immediately recovered. Amazing strength. To defeat him, you need to use a powerful attack so that he cannot recover. We must seize the moment and deliver a decisive blow to Asura. Chris asked if the guy got that power from the Pelans. Looks like he found a way to please those lunatics. Asur was furious that the hero dared to insult them. He said that the Phantom Mask would be punished immediately. Chris immediately told Vulcan to come out, and they blocked the heavenly punishment with a summon. Asur is perplexed because the undead cannot resist divine power. He seemed curious as to how they did it. Vulcan pointed at Toon and replied, "Like this. Not a bad defense skill." Asura can't believe that not only did Toon betray him, but he also joined that bastard. But the Death King didn't follow anyone from the very beginning. He simply found his place. Asura set out to destroy the dirty soul of the traitor. And Chris ordered Vulcan and Toon to defeat him and bring him. Toon has become even stronger and now uses the power of the Phantom Mask. At that moment, Chris put on a fox mask and scratched Asura from behind. The guy fell to the ground with an explosion. He said that the Phantom Mask had cornered him, but the hero would not be able to win. Asura has been given an endless source of restoration by a great being. He thought Chris was destined to lose, but then a snake grabbed him. And finally, the hero ordered Basil to rise up. Asura's last words were that Basil had also been taken over by the Phantom Mask. Asura's head was bitten off, but he immediately resurrected and screamed that nothing would work. Chris says it looks like he can regenerate infinitely if he has godly powers. You must finish off Asura with one blow. He does not react to Basil's power in any way. Even after the divine power is weakened, he does not die. Is this really Toon's doing? Asa said that's all, and the guys won't be able to kill him. They probably wanted to defeat him with Basil's soul. Unfortunately, their plan failed. Toon came up and replied that they had no intention of defeating him. Vulcan added that the order they received was not to kill him, and in order to bring Asura to his master. All the spirits joined forces with Chris and prepared a strike of maximum power. Asura sees that this is not divine power, but something else. There was a unification of divine and demonic forces, resulting in a tenfold impact. The remains of Asura's burnt body lay at the bottom of the newly formed huge crater. Thune said that his first victory with the Death Star was an honor. Vulcan said that finally a man appeared, similar to the successor. Chris did not understand why he was so happy after all. It was his successor. Hendrik called the hero and reported that everything was normal downstairs too. He said that in order to revive these ashes, it was necessary to call upon a deity or a demon. So the heroes stopped them and collected the sprouts. Yes, Chris said that finally the first victory. Before this, enemies could justify themselves by saying that the Ghost Mask and his comrades attacked suddenly. But today, everyone played for real because they started the attack. If this news gets out, people will start to think differently, that the heavens can turn inside out. Of course, Chris is hinting that the Golden Lich should do this. Why else would the hero bring him here? Then William, taking the puppeteer by the arm, said that he would go. The matter had to be completed. Yes, Chris told him to take care of it. But suddenly Baal said that he did have a keen eye. He asks what's wrong. The demon said something is coming here. A strong earthquake suddenly began. But no, it is space that is shaking. Everyone looked up and saw the heavens open and a ray of light shoot out from them. Chris knows this isn't heaven, it's a floor. And for that to be possible, Hendrik told the girls to duck while he took off. Toon told the Lord to look up. Asura Hum's body flew up and began to come together piece by piece. There is no doubt that this is a divine force. Chris experienced the same feeling as that day. He is sure that this is Carmen Pellin. Asura stepped onto the ground again and said that they were gods after all. They had not abandoned him, but had saved him. And now the time has come to deal with the traitors who did not believe in the deity. At this moment, Carmen dropped the plate. She felt that Asura Huma, who had gone to the 60th floor, seemed to have been defeated. Cain knew immediately that this was all the work of the Phantom Mask. But Carmen said not to worry too much. After all, Asura is a special toy. This is their guarantee in case their enemies want to cut them down at the root. When Carmen gave Asura divine power, she secretly put something else in. If she loses, he will be resurrected as her representative. Now the Phantom Mask will have to fight Carmen personally. This divine power belongs to that creature. Hendrik and Leah are furious. It is one of those who killed their brother in the past. Asura was surprised that the hero recognized Lady Carmen's divine power so quickly. How can one forget this lousy divine power? Asura doesn't understand where such hostility comes from. Not even a year had passed since the Phantom Mask began to climb the tower. Where did he get such negative feelings towards Mrs. Carmen? Asa wanted to ask who he was when he felt the presence of Vulcan and Toon behind him. They attacked him and there was an explosion. But then Asa grabbed them by the throat with both hands. He laughed because he couldn't kill them. But now that they have such a big difference in strength, they will suffer because they cannot die. Hendrik tried to attack, but Asa held him back. Although the dragon is strong, he now has the power of the Star 9. The guy flew up and knocked the huge dragon to the ground. Some kind of power of sacred beasts is not even fit to hold a candle to the Star Nine. Asa said that the guys would die right here for their words, but suddenly his movements became limited. He felt that this power was coming from that little girl. It became clear that she was the daughter of a spiritual being. While Asa was distracted, Chris cut the body of the Carmen puppet in half. All members of the team took part in this attack, but the guy still recovered. Asa says that no attack works against him anymore. Well, now it's his turn. He sent the same heavenly punishment to the heroes, but it's nothing compared to what happened before. Chris was left in the epicenter of the explosion, and as much as they didn't want to, everyone else had to run away. The hero only remembered how he was lying on the ground, and his body did not obey. Asa said that he woke up at the perfect moment. At that moment, he was strangling Miho. Hendrik and Leah were both wounded. Asa said that the phantom mask had failed. The moment they decided to go against the Star Nine, they had already lost. The heroes couldn't even get close to them, and they still had to die at the hands of this creature's slave, Carmen. Chris will never lose to them again. He simply won't let it happen. Asa decided to start with Miho and squeezed her throat even harder so that she couldn't breathe. But suddenly the nine-tailed fox began to talk to him. The Gumiho from the cub's body asked how Asura dared to touch her. He jumped back sharply, not understanding what had happened. What a terrible feeling. Could it really be that the one who climbed the tower was reborn? Kumiho organized an explosion and teleported the hero along with his friends. They found themselves in some unknown place. Leah asked if it was a nine-tailed fox. Kumiho said hello. They were seeing each other for the first time. Chris asked what kind of place it was. The fox replied that it was the 70th floor, the dark forest. But how could that be possible if they had not climbed? Kumiho replied that there are different ways to climb the tower. There is also a simplified way to get to the high floor. However, it is impossible to get points with it, so you have to go down to that floor, which corresponds to the level. Leah also never climbed to the 100th floor, but grew up there. Wait, Kumiho said there was a dark forest here, but Hendrik remembered that this area was not yet open. The desolate area was thick with fog, and it was easy to get lost. He asked why they were here. Chris replied that it might be safer here. Kumiho noted how quickly he thought, but her hands were shaking. It seemed she had reached her limit. The nine-tailed fox was not the type to interfere with the human world. All she can do is help the boys escape with the help of this body. Kumiho said that this is only a temporary measure. Those people will come again to kill the heroes. And now, with such a growth rate, the guys can't cope with them. They have to become stronger. Chris asked what she was suggesting. If this place had the way to become stronger that she was talking about, then where was it? Kumiho apologized, but there was no more time. She said it was better to hear the rest from him. She told Chris that they would see each other again and disappeared, returning the cub to Miho again. The hero wanted to catch up with her and ask her more details, but he didn't have time. Miho fell into Leah's arms. And who was this him she was talking about? Suddenly, Chris was shot with 2 arrows. The girl with the bow asks who the guys are and who dared to invade their dark forest. She said to get out of here right now, but stopped abruptly. Chris replied that it wouldn't work because they needed to find something here and began summoning Vulcan and Toon. The girl began to take off her mask. She didn't think they would meet again. The heroes were dumbfounded. It turned out that it was Elione. She apologized, saying she still reacted strongly to people from the outside. It didn't matter. Chris asked if Elione had already assembled her army. The girl replied that it was too early to talk about an army. These are a few dozen dark elves. Elione put them to guard the forest, that's all. But they have hope. And she pointed to the dark Yggdrasil, the new world tree that feeds the elves with power. Hendrik and Leah can't take their eyes off it. Elione said that it was nothing special yet, because the real Yggdrasil was much larger. Now it's the guys' turn to tell how they got to this state and why they ended up here. Chris suggested going to a more secluded place to talk. Hendrik said that the sacred star, one of the Star Nine, had intervened. And there was another servant who had accepted her power. With the help of Kumiho, the boys found themselves here. She told them to find something here that would help them resist the enemies. Elion asked if she meant that power. Leah knows it sounds rude, but she asks the elf to help them. She asks if Elion can fight with them. Chris stood on the porch of the house thinking. He was powerless against Carmen. If it weren't for the Kumiho, he would have died there. And so, Asura's words about the Phantom Mask's plan failing were repeated. Damn, Chris needs more power. Suddenly, someone's voice said that he felt an unfamiliar energy. I thought maybe the hero was sent by Baal and Kumaho. Chris doesn't know who it is. But isn't this someone being a little too familiar for a first meeting? The tree was surprised. They had seen each other so much, it was offensive to hear such words. The name of the source of this voice is the Dark Yggdrasil. He is the power that the heroes are looking for. Back to the boys. Total war of the Star Nine. Elione replied that of course they should be together. The Dark Elves will fight on the side of the resistance. Leah was delighted, and Hendrik, with his skepticism, asked if they could handle it. It was not for him to say, but it was dangerous. That's true, but it's all thanks to Chris. Moreover, the object of their revenge is the same. Elione has no reason to stay on the sidelines. Leah thanked her. Her brother will be happy. Only Elian was interested in where he was now. The tree thanked Chris for coming quickly. But how could one hesitate after such words? The hero asked why the Dark Yggdrasil had summoned him. The tree replied that it had developed some interest. Chris laughed, saying that most of those who showed interest in him were not quite normal. Bal says that there is no need to fear Dark Yggdrasil. He is on the hero's side. Suddenly, the tree presented Chris with the fruit of Dark Yggdrasil. It will give it to the hero. Fruit of the World Tree, usually given to High Elf royalty. But this is Dark Yggdrasil, and considering the changes in the Dark Elves due to demonic energy, this fruit is a demonic crystal. If Chris absorbs it, he will be able to gain enormous demonic power. With it, he will be able to defeat Asura. But the hero wondered why the tree wanted to give him the fruit. Dark Yggdrasil is something like a god for the elves. It would be more correct to give it to Elian. The tree asked if Chris knew the history before the tower appeared. Yggdrasil, its source, was created by a god who had existed since the time of the previous tower. It was a gift to the elves, his creations. So the god of the elves is the father of the world tree. This god loved and cared for the elves. They were beautiful, controlled spirits and had longevity. No other creature could compare with them. Dark Yggdrasil asked what the weakest point of perfect beings was. Chris guessed pride. It is true that the elves were blinded by their own beauty and lived separately from other races. They were satisfied with this life. Therefore, they could not climb the tower with the same zeal as others. And as a result, for several thousand years, there was not a single elf who could climb the tower. Chris is shocked. Tree asks him why he thinks the gods need creations that climb the tower. The hero answered, in order to become another god, and these creations were their power. Like Baal, for example, and those workers who got paid but failed to complete the task. What would Chris do with them? Naturally, he would have fired them and hired those who would listen to him. And then it dawned on him. Yes, Dark Yggdrasil says that their creator had great hopes for him and the Dark Elves, in particular for Elian. But now the elves have become too corrupted. They have begun to unite with other races and threaten the order of the tower. And at the center of it all is the Star Nine, powerful warriors whom Chris dreams of taking revenge on. Unfortunately, Elione couldn't become strong enough to obtain the power of Dark Yggdrasil, so she decided to give that power to Chris. The father of the World Tree offers to make a pact. The condition is to unite the Dark Elves, and the reward is the fruit. Chris has no reason to refuse, so he grabbed the fruit. The system warned that it contains strong demonic energy and he must be careful. If this is swallowed without preparation, the demonic power will destroy Chris's body from the inside. The father of the World Tree says he will help him. That's it. Branches containing demonic power surrounded the hero. They will be able to prevent the force from harming him to some extent. Chris called Vulcan and Toon. He will pour out all the strength he has to accept the energy of this fruit. And they must protect the owner until he gets all the power or until he dies. So everything was ready and Chris began the takeover. Meanwhile, the boys ran out of the house after him. Hendrik pointed into the distance. There was demonic energy there. It wasn't there when they came here. Right, Leah remembered that this energy was connected to her brother. Suddenly, there was an explosion from behind. Asur, having killed several Dark Elves, asks how the hero dares to evade the judgment of the sacred star. He finally found where the rebel was hiding. This time, Asur is determined to go all the way. One Dark Elf survived, thanks to the magical power within. He asked how Asura could get here so quickly. Hum replied that the eyes of the Star Nine were everywhere. It was much faster to start in the areas where they had the fewest eyes. Asur said that if the elf doesn't want to die, then let him call the Phantom Mask here, like ask him for help. Asura began to strangle the elf as a dragon's head loomed over them. Asur flew away and began to look around. Hendrik took the elf from his hands. Asa asked why he and Leah were here. This is just ridiculous. They should have brought the phantom mask or at least that relic. After that incident, Miho never came to her senses. Most likely, this is a consequence of the Kumiho's power. She couldn't help the boys anymore. Hendrik doesn't know for sure, but that demonic energy above the world tree was most likely Chris's doing. It seems he has absorbed something incredible again. Then Hendrik has only one thing left to do. He must stall for time until Chris returns. He threw an elf to Leah, told her to take him and get out of here. She didn't want to because they had to stick together until their brother returned. Hendrik shouted that she didn't have enough strength now and shouted again for her to leave. Looks like Phantom Mask is up to something again. Well then, if Asur kills the guys and he doesn't show up, no one will stop him. He began to advance. Leah took the elf under her arm and began to run away. Asura didn't like it. He wanted to hit her, but suddenly someone shot him in the hand. Elian flew up, asking how dare he touch her people. The Star Nine declared war on them, the Dark Elves. The arrows contained demonic energy, which was different from that of the Phantom Mask. It interferes with Asura's recovery. Demonic and divine powers are opposites. If he keeps getting hit, there might be problems. In that case, he'll deal with Elian first. Asura is incredibly fast, she can't react. Hendrik intervened and blocked his hand with his sword. And here he himself will stop Asura. Hendrik uses the power of the dragon race, the dragon's breath. The hand chased after Elian and the dragon screamed at her to go away quickly. And then Asura's hand grabbed her face and pressed her to the ground. He is a representative of those creatures. He warned that he would kill a lion first. At that moment, her fate was already decided. She insults the will of the gods. Asa felt a powerful energy. So that's where the Phantom Mask was. Hendrik can't let him hit Chris, so he quickly rushes to Asura and tells him to fight him. If he tries to put the main guild in danger, we'll have to take his life first. Asura is almost brought to tears by such devotion. Well, he tells Hendrik to try to stop him if he can. He successfully blocked the blow of the heavenly punishment, and the dragon was not so weak. If Hendrik had grown a little more, he could have been a danger to him. Asura burned a hole in the dragon's body. Hendrik asked if he was done talking. If so, let him attack then. Hendrik is still able to fight. Yes, he has an inflated sense of self-worth. Or, Asa suggested, it was thanks to dragon blood that Hendrik was still standing at all. Wasted so much energy on this bastard. This is the reason for Asura's defeat. Hendrik told him to take better care of himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to get out of it. The Dragon Slayer sword spirit dealt countless blows to Asura. It can't be. Leah has an attack speed that his recovery can't keep up with. This is the legacy that the goblins left behind. The spirit had told Leah earlier that nothing would work. She would simply buy time, nothing more. She might be able to outshine him a little, but it won't last long. She can't handle his ability to recover. Until a man falls from above who will supply Leah with divine power, they cannot count on success, even if the one in the mask comes back. In general, Leah does not deny it. The spirit screams at her to run away from here right now. She is the last of her kind. Does she really want to die without avenging her race? Leah replied that after Chris saved her from the kobold, he and other people did nothing but protect her. She had received help so many times, but she couldn't do the same for them. Leah knows that her brother won't stop and will find a way. She trusts him, so she will try to buy at least a little time. Hendrik tries his best to find the strength within himself, but for now he watches. Leah is incredible, but her eyes are bleeding. She's already on the edge. The goblin girl is trying to buy a little more time. Just a little more time. She will protect this place until her brother returns. As soon as Leah slowed down, Asa immediately grabbed her hand, and then he threw it out and it hit the ground. Cain and Carmen were not mistaken. If these guys are allowed to continue to gain strength, they will only hinder the Star Nine. Asur has accumulated strength for a powerful blow of heavenly punishment to destroy everyone at once. Leah doesn't have the strength to even move. Hendrik, holding his side, shouts at her that they need to leave quickly. The girl cries, apologizing to Chris. But suddenly everything became quiet and the sky became dark again. Asur did not understand what was going on because all this time there was a bright light of heavenly punishment. While he stood there in bewilderment, he received a powerful blow to the face. Asks what happened. Chris replied that this is what happened. He told Leah and Hendrik that they had done well and held out well. But unfortunately, this creature is tenacious. The hero said to take the others to a safe place. Toon was surprised that they wouldn't fight Vulcan. Chris replied that he had Tom, a powerful new spirit. Tom absorbed all the light of heavenly punishment. Asura is simply sick of all this magical power. How nasty Chris is. And the hero then said to check it out personally. Tom snuck up and bit off Asura's hand. Carmen doesn't understand what's happening. The divine power has suddenly become much less. Did Asura absorb her? Besides, where did he get such strong magical energy? Asura screams that nothing will work. Even if Chris is torn to pieces, he will still survive. Tom continued to bite off one part of his body at a time. The hero knows that this creature will be reborn again. Each time, Carmen will supply him with divine power. This creature is created from Chris's soul and magical energy. Tom looks like him, so he has a good appetite. The hero grabbed Asura by the neck. In other words, this creature can devour him forever until Carmen, who is connected to him, comes down here. Asura screams and asks her to stop. Carmen must stop sending him power. But it's too late. Chris told Tom to eat the guy whole. Carmen began to dissolve into thin air. She was in complete shock and couldn't even imagine what was happening. The floors burst apart again and a beam of light broke through them. Carmen fell to the ground and screamed, asking what was wrong. They finally met again. Chris said that after 10 years, she was even more disgusting. Carmen recognized the phantom mask immediately. It was time for her to get what she deserved. Let's go back 10 years. The damn traitors caught Chris off guard. But he had no intention of giving up then. The hero summoned his powerful weapon, the bone golem. However, it was instantly destroyed by divine power. Carmen told him to stop resisting. It was useless. Chris then squeezed out his last strength to revive the golem. Then he admitted that this could be the end. Yes, Carmen said then that it was the end. She destroyed the hero on behalf of the Star Nine. With a snap of his fingers, multiple blades cut across his entire body. Now, finally, Chris waited for the moment when she would get what she deserved. Carmen screams that this is a dark forest on the 70th floor. How did the hero manage to bring her here? Yeah, she's right about that. It was impossible. When Chris absorbed the fruit of the Dark Yggdrasil, he thought about how to destroy her. Even if he were to gain control of magic superior to Asura, there was no guarantee of victory. He would be resurrected again and again until you defeat Carmen, who sends him strength from above. She is the strongest being that cannot be approached. And the follower who received this power. Chris had to find a way to break the connection between them. And then he remembered that there were such beings on his side. There were not many ways to transfer power outside the tower. The most common is the transfer of powers to a follower. If Miho really did use this route, then she could use it as a trump card. Carmen realized that Chris had summoned the coming by using Asura. That was how he had summoned her. Carmen, unlike the others, is a creature inside the tower. And now she has come here in person. The trick that played on her greed would lead to her death. Carmen laughed out loud and stood up. Chris was so sure he could beat her. She said how naive he is. He is a pathetic puppy that didn't even climb halfway up the tower. Carmen will show you what the creatures of the upper floors are like. But suddenly, she completely stopped feeling strong. Chris hit her in the face and sent her flying. Looks like Carmen hit her head when she fell here. Completely forgot this was the 70th floor. She's got a punishment for a few hundred floors. Wow, Carmen tried to use her powers here. What a dumbass. She doesn't understand what's going on. It's like deja vu. It's like she's seen that bastard's gaze somewhere, even though it's the first time she's met him in person. And then that very man, the Death Star, Chris Morris, whom she had betrayed and destroyed, popped into Carmen's head. It's so annoying, she attacked, demanding that I not look at her with her lousy eyes. Tom absorbed her entire blow. Meanwhile, Chris approached and used the right to destroy. Caused destruction in Carmen using demonic power. But this is impossible unless he has the power of sacred beings. Carmen's limbs began to literally crumble like dust. She fell to the ground and screamed. How dare he ruin her body? She said with wild eyes that she would tear it apart with her own hands. But Carmen stopped the light. The power she gave Chris. He brings her back in the form of heavenly punishment. The hero looked at the bottom of the crater. He had been waiting 10 years for the chance to take revenge. The boys heard that the Phantom Mask had driven away the enemy. They had to help the wounded quickly. Leah can't help but admire her brother once again. He summoned the Star Nine itself. Elione added that Carmen was weakened by the punishment, so there was every chance of success. Hendrik understands that even despite the punishment, it is still not so easy to resist someone who has risen above the 600th floor. Chris won't be able to hurt her that much. Carmen is furious and hits the hero again. He just dodged it in a relaxed manner. Yeah, it would be a shame to just let her go. Carmen demands not to look down on her. After all, she is the strongest star 9 in this world. The girl hit the ground and it started to split. What an idiot. The wave reached the elves as well. The poor inhabitants began to flee from all over. Eliona commands everyone to climb the branches of Dark Yggdrasil. The holy attack will not be able to damage the tree. Hendrik hopes Chris also knows that this attack won't last forever. Yes, Carmen uses force on purpose, despite the punishment. She moved closer to Chris and their powers clashed together. Carmen screams that if she tries even a little harder, he will immediately die like a pathetic bug. And then Chris summoned Camille, Basil's huge snake. The hero can say the same about her. Carmen has become weaker than she was 10 years ago. Maybe because she stopped climbing up and grovels at the feet of sacred beings? Rage overwhelmed her and she crawled out of the snake's mouth, burning her. Carmen screams that the phantom mask doesn't understand anything. The explosion engulfed the entire dark forest, turning the ground into a field of blazing lava. Despite the powers of the saint and the power of restoration, it is impossible to ignore the tower's punishment forever. The more force Carmen uses, the more severe the punishment. She receives warning after warning. How noisy, she knows it herself. She just needs to destroy the phantom mask, and then she will regain her powers. Carmen screams that they were just being smart. They just found a way to get stronger quickly, unlike that idiot Chris Morris. The fiery hand almost caught up with the hero. She took out her sword and chopped her into pieces. It looks like Carmen is in a hurry, judging by the tricks. This is not very like her. But then, Chris didn't understand what was going on. She stopped attacking. What was she up to? And then Carmen suddenly jumped out, grabbing the hero by the face. She took off his mask to look at that impudent mug. Carmen's eyes widened and she stopped. It's unbelievable. Is the phantom mask really Chris Morris?